world. And in Mike's world, we do things my way. And you have, of course, always choices. You can choose to watch and enjoy the show, or you can leave. But one thing that will not be tolerated in Mike's world is trolls. So if you have a legitimate channel with videos of you, in fact, doing things, cleaning your fish tank, working on your car, something with you in the video, that brings you to, in my opinion, to being a little bit less of a troll, but not exactly a non-troll. So, but in reality, most people will be allowed to voice their opinions, but you will not be allowed to break my concentration. If you do so, I will, I don't actually have a can of troll spray. I actually do have a can of spray that says troll spray on it, but I couldn't find it. So for my first show, I will just depend on my moderators to use their troll spray. So I am not here for your entertainment personally, although if you are entertained by me personally, that's okay. I am not here for you to change the subject matter. Not yet, Dennis. I don't see any comments, actually. I have to, well, you know what, I'm just getting used to this new phone. Okay, I put up live chat, all messages are visible. So I don't see any, I don't even see your message. Okay. Okay. No, there aren't anybody, has not been anybody commenting yet. But if they decide, there'll be plenty of troll spray to go around. So I am here on this channel to teach you construction techniques. And today's dissertation is going to be on deck and dock building. Thank you, Dennis. And when I explain to you that it's a little bit more difficult than going out into your backyard with a hammer and nails, I will explain to you why, and I'll explain to you the basic tools that you'll need to do the job. I will explain to you the proper way to put the boards down on the joists, and I will also explain to you the nomenclature of the boards and the hardware we're going to use to build a standard deck and or dock system in America made out of wood. Now, there are new materials that are PVC related, or what they call plastic, or composite materials. I tried working with those for decks, and first of all, when I built decks in the 1980s and 1990s and 70s, that material was 3 and 4 times the price of lumber. So it wasn't feasible, and I only did one small deck made out of that, what they call the composite lumber at the time. And the problem with that lumber was big. It was a huge problem. It was a huge problem using that composite lumber. One of the problems was the price was basically, in 1980, I was paying $1 per square foot for 2x6 lumber. It was 50 cents per lineal foot. So you needed 2 of those, a little bit more than that, but 2 of those to make a square foot of decking. So I was paying $1 per square foot. The problem with the composite materials back then was that the materials came out to about almost $4 per square foot. So it was cost prohibitive. So my instructional video today is going to be based on building a wooden deck that, if properly maintained, my decks from the 1980s, from the early 1980s in Howard Beach, that you're going to see some of, if the people maintained the deck the way I explained, showed them, and some of them I had a maintenance contract on. The decks that I built in 1981, they're still there. I was in New York 2 years ago, and my decks that I built in 1981 that were for very wealthy families and preserved properly are still in existence and still a working product. So I will explain to you the type of material needed to maintain and treat a deck and how often it has to be done. So let's see. We don't have a lot of people viewing, and that's okay. I'll get my first dissertation out without being interrupted. So one of the things that you should know about before you decide that you're going to build a deck is that you should have the tools. And deck and dock building is just a little bit more complicated than a hammer and a skill saw. There is knowledge about what types of wood you want to use and then how to apply the wood. So we'll start with, let's just start with a basic piece of lumber. Now, this does not actually represent a piece of deck building lumber. This is stuff we have here in the Philippines. But this, we're going to imagine, this is something called Himalaya. It has no grain up or no grain down. Well, the average piece of lumber in America has a grain that you'll buy for deck, and the grain is either, when you put the board on the deck, the grain is either looks like an umbrella with a curvature over the top if the board is laid on the deck, this is the proper way to put the board on the deck, and I will explain to you why. Or if you put the board on the deck incorrectly, the board will look like this and the grain will be down. However, most people, when they're flipping lumber onto a deck, they will put what appears to be the good side facing the sun or the sky. That is not the correct way to apply lumber to a deck. It actually reduces the life of the deck by multitudes of years, depending on where you live and the weather conditions. So you always take the board and put the crown facing the top. Now, if you don't like the way the top looks because it has a knot in it, or you don't like the way the grain looks, get another piece and put the lumber on the deck with the crown up. Now, the reason for that, when the board is nailed, you don't nail the nails vertical. You do not put the nails in the board vertical like that. You put the nails in the board on a 20-degree angle. I call that the eagle's claw or the dragon's claw. So you are actually pinning the lumber down to the deck on an angle. This way, when the lumber wants to bow, and it will, because of the way that the sun is going to dry the lumber. When the sun dries the lumber dries on more of a cup or more of a curve downward, and does not want to apply so much pressure to the nail. If you put the board like this with the what we call the cup up, when the lumber dries, it pulls the nail out of the lumber. That's one problem with putting the nails, or putting the cup. This is the cup, because a cup holds water, right? So the cup is in here. This is the cup. It's like an upside down umbrella. If you put the cup up towards the sky, when the lumber curls or dries, it wants to pull the nail out. And it does. You are not going to stop the cup from pulling the nail out, or at least applying a great amount of pressure to it, depending on the size of the nail you used and the quality of the nail. If it's galvanized and it's long enough, it won't pull up, but it'll pull through the cup. That's one problem that people make for themselves, a big mistake. Spanky 9067. Thank you. I look like your shop teacher. I'm trying to look like, I'm giving you a proper dissertation on how to build decks, Spanky. I mean, there is nothing that I will say in this video that I don't care if you're an architect or an engineer. I don't care what your professional skill sets are. I don't care what your license or education is. There is nothing that I'm going to tell or teach people in this video about deck and dock building that would not be correct. So if I was going to take a test on deck or dock building, I would definitely get 100%, because I do it better than most anybody that I've ever seen do it, for sure, and maybe better than anyone has ever done it before. So thanks. As far as being a shop teacher, I should be a professor, the deck building professor. So this is one problem and one mistake that people make by putting the cup up. And they do that because the grain on the cup is pretty. Now, here's the problem with putting the cup up, digressing back to deck building. When the cup is up and it rains or there's moisture from dew at night, moisture will settle onto the top of the lumber, or the rain will settle on the lumber. This part of the piece of decking or timber that you use, this would be considered the heart, H-E-A-R-T, heart of the lumber. And heart lumber is typically more spongy, more absorbent, and softer than the crown lumber is. So when you put the deck board with the crown, this is the crown down, that's the wrong way to put it, because inside the heart lumber is usually spongy. So what'll happen is it'll rain in the daytime or at night, and the heart lumber will absorb this water like a sponge. And then when it dries, it will shrink. And this crack that you see here is actually heart lumber that has started to crack, because that's just the way wood reacts to moisture and water. So you always want to protect that by putting it down. So you want to always put the board's crown up. If you have a crown that you don't like because of a knot or something like that, go find another board. But put the board's crown up. So there's two reasons that I gave you so far. One is because the nails, when the crown wants to bend, and it does want to bend, and the lumber wants to shrink, I'm going into the third reason. When you put the nail through the crown like this, and the width of the lumber of a 2x6 pressure treated lumber, each board, every board I ever used from the day I started building decks shrinks widthwise 3/8 of an inch. 1/4 inch is the minimum, 1/2 inch is on the maximum side. So if you put the nail in the board like this and the lumber shrinks widthwise, this is actually pulling the nail tighter into the joist, this being the joist. So that's another reason to put the crown up. So now we just to digress, the crown up, when it rains, it acts like an umbrella, and the moisture rolls off left or right. It doesn't sit in the lumber for any length of time. Now, if it's daytime, then it dries off right away because the water is off the top of the umbrella. But if it's crown down and installed incorrectly, the water sits in here and bakes up and heats up, and on a molecular level, it destroys the heart lumber. Now, it will take years, of course, for this to happen. That's the third reason you don't put the lumber crown down. This is improper, crown down. Now, the fourth reason, and the big reason, and the most problematic reason for not putting the crown up like this, and you as a backyard garage trained deck and dock builder, somebody in your family had a hammer and a handsaw, and they decided to be a deck builder. That's all well and good, but if you want to be a proper anything, you need an education in the field. So we gave you three reasons why you put the crown up. Now I'm going to give you the fourth reason. The so-called non-experts building decks and or docks, especially docks, but I'll get to that in a moment. If you put one piece of wood crown up because you like the grain, and you put the next piece crown down because you like the grain, it causes a problem that you're going to see depending on how much sun you get, but it won't take but just a few weeks, and you'll see why I just explained what I explained and why it's important to listen to my instructions. One, crown down because the grain is pretty, crown down, right? And now with the sun and the weather, the board is going to want to shrink inward, narrow, but it's also going to want to cup. And this is the cup. And which way is it going to cup? It's going to cup and make a cup in the heart of the lumber. So this board's going to roll up a little bit. Rolling up a little bit, just an 1/8 of an inch over the course of a few months. But it's going to roll up or cup up. So this one, because you like the pretty grain, cups up 1/8 of an inch. But this one, that had the crown placed properly, when it cups, it doesn't move height-wise from the joist. So every time you put a board like this, when it cups, it doesn't go upward, it just stays where it is. That's the fourth reason. So if you have one that stays where it is and the next one cups up like that, then this edge of this board is going to be about 1/8 of an inch higher than the one that has the crown installed properly. So your entire deck, because you didn't follow the procedure to put the boards based on the crown of the lumber, your entire deck is going to be, each board that's crowned down is going to be up 1/8 of an inch from the boards that are crowned up. Makes a difference. Another difference, that's the fourth reason. The fifth reason that you want to put all the boards crown up is because the thickness of the board. Remember, I told you the width of the board. The width of the board is going to shrink between 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. Typically, it's 3/8 of an inch. However, the board is going to shrink in depth as well. So when you have a board that is crowned down, and then you have another board next to it that's crowned up, it's going to exaggerate the difference in the thickness of the deck, because the board that is applied or installed improperly has water in it, and this water in the cup, from constant getting wet and expanding and constant drying from the sun, is going to make this board shrink more than the board that has been installed properly, crowned up. It's going to take a while, but it's going to happen. So what you're going to have is the most uneven deck surface. That the deck is never going to be flat, because all of these boards are going to crown. They're going to cup. But if the crown is up, they're going to cup down. So each board will meet at the edge if they're all installed crown up, and then the boards will go up and then down again, like a little umbrella. Now, when I explain to you how to nail these boards, if you put the nail straight into the lumber like that, there's really no strength when the board wants to cup either this way or this way, because the nail just went straight in. And if you've ever pulled the nail out of a piece of wood, if it's straight into the wood, it's very easy to pull out, relatively easy. If it's in on what I call the dragon's claw or the eagle's claw, if it's in like this, it's much harder to pull out. It's harder to pull out for a lot of reasons, but it's the way it goes into the grain on the joist, and it's just the fact that you put one nail like this on this side of the board, 3/4 of an inch in from the edge of the board is where you put your first nail in on about a 20-degree angle. 3/4 of an inch on the left-hand side of the board is where you put the board in, nail in on a 20-degree angle. Then, my decks were always built with a third nail. My third nail went in on an angle like that, on a 20-degree angle, from the end grain. From the end grain, a third nail went into the board on an angle like this. So now it wanted to hold the board where it is. That's the proper way to nail and the proper way to install the board. Crown up, 3 nails, angle, angle, and then an angle. Now, there's a board that's below this. This is what you nailed it in. It's called a joist, J-O-I-S-T. The joist is going to have two individual aspects of the joist. You're going to be concerned about just one of them unless it's a fascia board. If it's a fascia board, you have to be concerned about both of them. A fascia board is the board that goes around the outside of the deck, or the last board on the end of the deck, the last joist. So the two grain and or aspects of the joist that you're going to be looking at are one, this board, if you take the board and look at the board from the end of the board and close one eye. Just look at the board and close one eye. You might not be able to see this, but this board has a bow in it, like this. I'm exaggerating the bow, but this board is higher in the middle by 1/4 of an inch than it is on both ends. This bow on this joist is called the king crown, K-I-N-G, king crown. You want to have always all the king crown up towards the sky. Now, some boards don't have a king crown. Some boards are perfectly straight. Well, then that's the way it is. But you will still look at the end grain and put from the end grain, you'll look from the end like this and decide where you want, which side you want to have up towards the sky. But you'll always put the king crown with the bow towards the sun. This way, if you're building a 16 by 16 deck, the majority of the joists are going to have a king crown. If this king crown is up 1/4 of an inch higher than each end, and it could be more on a 16-foot board, but typically it's 1/4 inch to 5/16. If you put one board up towards the sky, king crown, and you're not paying attention, and you're just flipping boards into what is called Tico clamps, which I'll get to in a minute, and you put one board king crown up, and the next board king crown down, king crown down. Well, now the board is lower in the middle by 1/4 of an inch. When you're nailing your deck boards, now and you have king crown on this side and king crown on this side, and then king crown down on this side, it's 1/4 of an inch lower than your two boards left and right. You're going to see a space of 1/4 inch under the board, and your nails are going to be 1/4 of an inch away from the joist. That destroys another aspect of the deck when it starts to, well, get seasoned. It's not right. There's moisture that gets between when you put this king crown down and you have up and up king crown, and you have a space in here of 1/8 of an inch or 3/16 of an inch, it causes multiple problems, bigger problems than you would understand without knowing what the problems are until years later. But what happens is you'll get a little bug that will decide that 1/8 of an inch space that's underneath the decking and on top of the joist. He has a place to live now. He has a nice little place to live. And he's going to live right in that little space. Now, it could be mini ants, could be some weird little oddball water bug, but it's like a little home that you built for him. In addition to that, these nails are going to be exposed more to the weather. But in addition to that, the little bug, spider, bug, ants, termites that that infiltrate this space and decide to live there. They have all kinds of silverfish, silverfish, silverfish especially like these little holes. Well, they eat food and they process the food and they discard their waste in this little space. Believe it or not, most of the waste from the little bugs that are going to live in this space is a little bit caustic, and it works against the nail in the form of oxidation and rust. Plus, now your board is spongy to the deck. So every time you don't see it, you don't feel it, you don't know it's happening, but every time someone walks across the deck, the board wants to go up and down like a little spring. And every time it does that, it loosens up the nail and works the head out of the board. So you want to put all the king crown up, and you want to put all the crown of the lumber up, and the king crown of the joists, you want it all up. There's no way when you're on top of the deck to correct this issue. There's just no way to do it. It's already done. Once you start putting the joists up, king crown up and king crown down, the only way to correct it is to remove all the decking and then change the position of the joists. Other than that, that's the way the deck is going to live for as long as it lives. But you've taken life away from the deck by allowing these spaces underneath. The bugs are going to want to live in there. They're going to excrete their whatever they expel from their body. It's going to be caustic to the wood, and it's going to be caustic to the nail. So those are how you apply, that's how you apply deck lumber to joists. Now the different types of fasteners to nail these boards down. You could go out, and I'm going to get you a sample of each fastener right now. I'm going to just get it out of my bucket here. Well, I thought I was. Okay, I think I did bring fasteners in. I did. They're on the floor. Hold on. I'll be about 10 seconds. Okay, so there's all different kinds of fasteners now. Some are good and some are not. Some are removable and some are permanent. And some, thank you, Big Al. Some of the, well, this is the new camera. This is the Samsung S21 Ultra. Some fasteners you should not use for decking, okay? One thing that you should never use to build the deck with are non-hot dipped galvanized nails or non-treated nails. Now, you're going to go to a lumberyard and you're going to have a salesperson that's going to tell you these are zinc-plated nails. Those are garbage. Those are garbage. If you used them, a zinc-plated nail, and you live where I had property in Michigan, in Traverse City, where you never see any salt air coming from the ocean, or there's no salt in the air, they'll probably be okay. But do not use a non-treated nail or fastener. Do not use a non-treated nail or fastener on a deck that's anywhere near the coastline or on the water. You will regret it. You will regret it fast, too. So I'm going to show you the 3 different types of fasteners that I used. Actually, there were 4. And I have the 4th one somewhere, but I just couldn't put my hands on it. So the 4th one, I'll explain to you what it was. It was a hot, H-O-T, hot-dipped, galvanized screw. There was only one company in New York City that you could get a quality hot-dipped galvanized screw from. And they were somewhere around $100 a box for a 50-pound box. And the thing that those screws did that was good, and the thing that those screws did that was bad, are digressing back to where the deck was a little bit off the joist. Sometimes you could pull you did not pre-drill the holes in this lumber. We should talk about the lumber, but I'll go over that in a minute. Sometimes it would pull the lumber closer to the joist. Sometimes it would pull it right down to the joist, but probably not. The problem with those hot-dip galvanized screws is they were 3 inches long. The boards were running 5/8 of an inch thick. If you put those screws in, you had one chance to get the screw in properly. So if you made the mistake of screwing the nail I'll show you what I mean here. If you made the mistake, thank you, Pretty Boy Karkevic, thank you for stopping by, thanks for the compliment. If you made the mistake of putting the nail flush with the surface of the wood, the screw, the galvanized screw, flush with the surface of the wood, if you remember, I told you the thickness of the deck board, which starts out at 1 5/8, it's going to shrink down 1/8 of an inch. It's going to happen. It happens to pressure-treated lumber, and it happens to non-pressure treated lumber. It does not happen to cedar or redwood, but you can't use galvanized nails in cedar or redwood because when it oxidizes, it turns black on the cedar and the redwood. So you cannot use galvanized nails on cedar or redwood. Don't do it. Don't try it. Don't think you're going to coat it. It ain't going to happen. So if you used a galvanized screw, a galvanized screw to screw this deck down, and you left it flush with the surface, a few weeks from now, the board's going to shrink 1/8 of an inch. It takes about 4 or 5 weeks in the summer sun in New York City, or anywhere else in the sun. Now you have every screw on your entire deck. The screw did not go down with the lumber, and the screw, after you put that screw in, the porous surface of the galvanizing locks into the joist and into the deck lumber. If you were to try to go around and turn those screws down to make it flush with the surface of the deck lumber, more than 50% of the heads of the screws would snap off. Because the screw itself, when it goes into the lumber, it locks up into the lumber. Not right away, though. So let's say you put a screw in and it didn't go down all the way and you want to make it go down a little bit further that day, not tomorrow, that day. You could try, after a few hours, to apply more pressure to the screw and make it go down. It might work, but it might not. It might just snap the head off. For some reason, the screws lock up in the joist right away. The water, friction, the oxidation, I have no idea what it is. But you have a short window to change or to adjust your screw. So when you put these screws in, if you use galvanized screws, you have to put the screws, sink them down into the, you sink it down into the lumber 1/8 of an inch. You sink it right down into the lumber 1/8 of an inch. We'll get, pretty boy, that's a great question. And we didn't have those back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, but those new screws, they're great. The ones with the hex heads, the ones with the star heads, they're a fantastic screw. But we didn't have those back then. And most people don't want to pay for them, even in today's world. So if we had them back then, I would have used those, because those are not galvanized. And those, from when I did use them, the few times I used them, you could remove them later on, a week or a month later, because the head, they're just a better quality screw. But most people are not going to spend the money for that. They're going to go for the much cheaper galvanized screw. So they're the best. Now, they might as well be stainless steel at that point. That's how good they are. And I have never seen them oxidize or rust like a galvanized or non-galvanized nail would. So I think those are great screws. But we didn't have them back then. And most places here in the Philippines, again, I live in the Philippines. They don't have those screws here. They have something that looks like those screws, but they're not the same quality steel. So we're just talking about how to build a deck in America, and not with the tools and the fasteners that I had available to me for the most part in America. So if you put those screws in today, galvanized screws, because they're a lot cheaper than the screws Pretty Boy Krakevic is talking about, probably half the price. And people do buy stuff by the price. If you put those hot dip galvanized screws in, and a couple hours later you want to go down another 1/8 of an inch, the chances are the head is going to bust off the top of the screw. So you have to set them down 1/8 of an inch. And that goes the same for those, what was the name of that screw? I don't know the name of it. Spax. Okay, that's just one name. Though that goes the same for the SPAC screws with the hex heads or the diamond heads or the star heads. That you got to put them down 1/8 of an inch lower than the deck surface for wood. Plastic is something else altogether. Now, there's another way to put the deck lumber down, and what I did was I went out and bought a nail gun, and this is a metal clip or magazine for a nail gun. This particular nail is not galvanized. These cost $75 for 2,000 nails. But they're not galvanized nails. If you use them around marine construction, in 4 years, where the deck lumber meets the joist, the screw, the nail will just rust away. So you don't want to use these for a finished product, but they did and do make, this is a Bostitch nail system. The advantage to this is I can shoot, literally, I can shoot 40 of these nails into the lumber in a minute. Whereas with a hammer, it could take you half an hour to put 40 nails in. The disadvantage is they have no roughness or no grabbing power. That goes for the galvanized nails as well. This is not galvanized. The galvanized are just a little different color, but they have no grabbing power. So those you have to put on a 20-degree angle. Now there's another nail that goes for this gun. It's called stainless steel. Those are about $175 a box. Take your $175, take that money. If you're going to build a wooden deck and you want to use stainless steel nails for the boss stitch system, take the money, I don't know, use it to light a barbecue. That's how well spent buying boss stitch galvanized nails would be, because they have zero holding power. They don't oxidize into the lumber. They're shiny. They're polished finish. They're like a mirror finish. And you could put one in even on those claw angles, and they come right out when the wood cups. They're garbage. Don't use galvanized, don't use stainless steel nails in a boss stitch gun or a non-boss stitch gun, which I don't know that you could get galvanized nails anyway. Now, the galvanized nails from boss stitch, there's two types. The head on this, you can see the head is nipped off. It's called a moon head or a clipped head. This is not what you want to use for a deck nail. You want to use a clip like this with a plastic magazine holder with a full head on the galvanized nail on the boss stitch nail gun, because the galvanized nails for the boss stitch system will, when you put them in the lumber, it knocks the preservative off the nail and it oxidizes within a few days, and that causes the nail to lock up into the wood. Now, of course, in order to use a boss stitch nailer, you have to have one of those. They're about somewhere over $350. Then you need a compressor to run the nail gun, and they're about $250 to $300. And then you need a hose, like a 100-foot hose, and that's about $100 for a good hose. So you need $700 to set up your boss stitch nail gun. And then you need to be able to get boss stitch nails. I'm a firm believer in the boss stitch galvanized nail system, except for a deck that's built over the water. I've used them before, and some of my decks are 35, 40 years old, and some of those decks are still in good condition because of the way they were treated, but the boss stitch galvanized nails are long gone, where the wood where the deck lumber met the joist. That little space in there, even if it's not a space, the moisture from the salt air got in between the deck lumber and the joist. And in 35, 40 years, the nails rusted out. So in other words, the boss stitch galvanized nails are better than the non-galvanized nails, but they won't last as long as the deck if you preserve the deck properly. So there's another kind of nail that you can use. It's called a galvanized nail. So this is a hot dipped galvanized nail. And this nail is 12 inches long. And this is for timber, T-I-M-B-E-R or T-I-M-B-R-E, timber. It's a timber spike, but it's hot dipped. And the difference between hot dipped and electroplated galvanized, you don't ever want to use electroplated, is that it's a rougher surface. There's actually a product applied to the metal that has bonded to the galvanized, to the steel below. So this is what a 10 penny galvanized nail looks like. It's very rough. It's not shiny. It has a rough, let me see if I get it by the count. It has a rough surface. And that's the galvanizing process. These nails will last for 40 or 50 years, but you have to put them in by hand with a hammer. So if you're building a deck or a dock over the ocean or near the water, you need to use these, or you need to use, there's another product called the stainless steel screw. Those are cost prohibitive for most jobs, but people use them. Now, I've not used those Spax nails that Pretty Boy Kirkevic talked about over the deck, over the ocean, but these are what I would use to nail the deck boards down if you were in a backyard near a canal or near the ocean or on a dock. This is what you would use. You would not use the Bostitch galvanized nail system. I've used several million of those nails. I'm telling you that several million of those nails failed after, when I went back to New York in 2018, I went to visit a few people that I built decks for. Nobody that I would necessarily, nobody that you would know, but people that I built decks for. And mostly I went there to see the deck, not the people, because most of the people were long gone. Not dead, but just they moved out of the community. And my decks that I built out of the stainless steel nails, those were all, every board on every deck had to be re-screwed with something. The ones I used the galvanized Bostitch nails on, over the water, every board had to be refastened down to the joist. Every board. Every deck, every board. And most of the decks that I went to see, and there were like sometimes I'd have 10 or 15 deck and dock systems on one block that I did. I went into the backyards. I knocked on the doors, and some of the people remembered me, and I went, like I would typically build a deck and dock system here, and the neighbor on both sides would want one, and then the neighbors on that side would want one. And sometimes I'd spend an entire summer from April till November on just one block, just building decks and docks over the ocean. So do not use galvanized Bostitch nails and think that they're going to last. I don't know. I left New York from the 1980s. I left it in 95, but I would imagine they might have lasted 20 years, but every single nail that I put down in Bostitch galvanized nails has been replaced. They didn't have stainless steel screws at the time, and the galvanized screws, they held up, but you can never take them out. So, and you could never readjust them. They held up, the galvanized screws. Now, this is a bit of knowledge about the lumber itself. Now, these nails are not for the young at heart, beginners. These nails are not for beginners. These nails can be, a real man could put this 12-inch spike into timber with a 32-ounce S-wing hammer. But it would be time-consuming and laborious, because you'd have to hit it so many times that what happens is it'll knock the galvanizing off the top of the nail. And then it'll it'll allow this part of the nail to rust. That's going to be, no matter what you put it in with, the galvanizing is going to get knocked off the head of this nail unless the timber that you're putting the nail in is wet. Then you could put it in with this hammer, a 32-ounce S-string. Then you could put it in because it's going to go in a lot easier. But to try to put this nail through 12 inches of dry pressure-treated timber with this hammer, if you have a real strong arm with accurate pounding, when you pound it accurately, then the energy goes from the hammer to the nail directly down the axis of the nail. You could do it, but it would be hard to do it. Now, the better hammer for that would be a 2-pound maul. And the reason that this is all wrapped up like this is because when you miss, this nail is going to want to smash the lumber underneath the hammerhead. So this would be, now you could drive the nail in with this, and this is much smoother and rounder and softer metal than the S-string. And you could drive the nail into 2 dried pieces of timber, but it would be hard still, even with a 2-pound maul. What some people do is they pre-drill the first piece of lumber. So this is basically a nail that is just shy of, it's 3/8 of an inch in diameter. You could literally drill the hole through the first 6 inches of lumber, 3/8 of an inch a hole. So you're not trying to smash it through the first piece of timber. And if it was just a lateral holding on, you could drill it all the way through both sides, but I'd go down to a 1/4 inch on the bottom section. So this nail could be driven in with a 2-pound maul. But, like I said, if the timber was dry, it would be a hard job. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to man up a little bit. And when I say man up, I mean man up. We're talking about going full man, full thaw. Okay? This is a man hammer. Okay? Now this hammer has a 12-pound hammer head, and the hammer handle is a 12-inch by 1-inch galvanized bolt welded into the bottom of the hammerhead and welded solid on the top of the hammerhead. And then this nail, this is actually a 6-inch spiral nail. And that's welded onto one side of the hammer so you know where your hand is in relationship to which way the energy of the hammer is going to go. Now this is a man hammer. This man hammer will drive this nail through 2 pieces of dry timber. Maybe. Because what I didn't tell you about the first 2 possibilities of a 32-ounce S-string and a 2-pound maul is if that wood is dry and if there is a decent size, either a pin knot cluster or a knot in the lumber. If one of those 2 exist, you're going to need a lot more energy to drive the nail through it than the S-string or the maul, and the possibility exists that this is going to bend on you. And like any nail that doesn't go into the lumber and bends, you're going to have to pull it out. Now you need a tool to pull it out with. And the most convenient thing to do at that point is if you're just driving it in and say it's into the lumber 8 inches, the easiest thing to do is to go get your die grinder and cut it off. Start another nail next to it and pre-drill it. You're not going to want to try to pull this nail out. Now, if you did, you need a 4-foot crowbar, a special pry bar made for pulling out this size nail. It's usually 4 feet long or 6 feet long. It looks similar to a crowbar, but it's 4 feet long or 6 feet long. And then, of course, you'd have to put that crowbar on a block of wood, and then 2 men would get on the end of the crowbar to pull it out. So when you apply this type of nail, if you're going to do this type of work, what you need to do is figure out, is the timber dry or is it wet? Now, wet timber, wet like 4x6 through to 4x6, you could send it through 2 wet timbers, but it's going to be difficult. You could pre-drill it, make it a lot easier, pre-drill the first piece. So that's just part of deck and dock building. Probably most things that you wouldn't get to, but it applies for smaller boards as well. If you're working with wet pressure treated lumber, the nails go in relatively easy. If you're working with pressure treated lumber that's been sitting out in the sun for a year and has already dried up, you're going to have a lot of problems with fastening stuff together. So those are your options for fasteners. Now, how would you, a lot of people just take the joists and nail, like this board here, they just take this joist I dropped my deck lumber. A lot of people think they can get away with just putting some nails. Let's say this is your joist. The whiteboard is the joist, right? That's the joist. And at the end of the joist, typically, you put what is called a fascia board, a fascia, F-A-C-I-A, fascia board on the joist. A lot of people think they can just put a nail in here, and they do. And that's going to hold the weight of the deck, and probably, maybe, it will. It depends on how you have the deck supported from underneath. Is it back from the fascia board, 12 inches or 16 inches, or is the fascia board where your vertical columns are down to the ground? There's all different ways of building a deck. Now, if it's cantilevered over, then you could, but you should not. You could just put the fascia board on with some spikes or 5-inch nails. The board is 1 inch and 5/8. To use a 10-penny nail, no, it ain't gonna work. To use a 16-penny nail, nope, it's not gonna work. It's gonna buckle, it's gonna twist in the sun, it's gonna pull apart. You use a 30-penny nail, yes, you could do it with a 30-penny nail. Or you could take something like this. It's called a Teco, T-E-C-O. Now, a Teco will hold the joist in place by cradling it like this. It's cradled into, the joist is cradled. This is the joist that would go up to the deck here. The deck would be up here. There's all different size Tecos. There's 2x3 Tecos, which would be about this long, and 2x4 Tecos, 2x6 Tecos, 2x8 Tecos. This is a 2x10 Teco. They make them in 3-inch, 3x2, 3x4, 3x6, 3x8, 3x10, 3x12, 4-inch, 4x3, 4x4, 4x6, 4x10. They make Tecos in every size, if they're available in your country. Now, this Teco was a zinc-plated Teco that I used back in the 80s because they didn't make galvanized Tecos then. So you could see it's starting to oxidize. So what you would do with this, what I would do with it before I used it is dip it in to some paint with turpentine thinned out 20%. Now this Tico would be bonded. You'd want to put this as the faceplate. So you would take the Tico and nail it to the faceplate through these holes here. And then it sits in here. And then on this side of the Tico are nails to go into the joist, up and down here. So now the Tico is nailed with 6 penny nails through here this way and 6 penny nails into the joist. That would be how you should hold your faceplate on, if your faceplate is the supporting the weight of the deck. But even if it's not, using the Ticos is a good idea, because what happens is these faceplates, remember I told you that the deck lumber is going to want to twist or cup. Well, when you have a fascia board, you also need to look at two things. The king crown on the fascia board, you want that up. And the crown of the fascia board, you want that out, facing the yard. Or you don't want the crown facing the joists. You don't want that. You want the crown facing out. So if you have a Tico on here, the Tico prevents this board from cupping, because this one is going to cup way more for two reasons. One, it's probably going to be a 2x8 or a 2x10. It's always going to get wet every time, inside and outside. So it's always going to dry and expand differently inside and outside. So you want to use the Ticos to hold up your joists like this. So this is what it would look like. And you'd have the joist in here. You don't have to have, if this is a 10-inch joist, let's say it's 10 inches long, you don't have to have a 10-inch Tico. You could use a 6-inch Tico or an 8-inch Tico. You don't have to have the full size. It's better if you do, but if you don't, it's okay. Now, if it's not holding up the weight of the structure, then half the length of the board is fine to hold up the weight. And then, of course, you could put spikes into the end, those 30 penny nails, galvanized, 30 penny galvanized nails. So that's how to secure the lumber. Now, the kind of lumber that you're going to be able to get. First of all, the lumber that is still good from the 1980s was a lumber called CCA, copper, chloride, and arsenic pressure-treated lumber. That's illegal in America. You can't buy that anymore. And you can't buy it because it has copper, chloride, and arsenic in the treatment process, and arsenic is poisonous to your liver and your brain. And when you cut the lumber, the dust, theoretically, it causes damage to your innards. But that didn't stop them from selling that lumber from 1980 to about 1995. Was about the last time I remember just one yard, was able to use that treatment process, and that yard was for government jobs. See, the government uses the copper, chloride, and arsenic treatment on their commercial jobs for a park, let's say. So what the children are playing on for the substructure of the different things is copper, chloride, and arsenic lumber. That's the way it was in the 90s. But that lumberyard would not sell to the general public. So copper, chloride, and arsenic is out, and then they put some other chemical in the lumber, pressure treated it, that my lumber that I bought in 1981 for some of my bigger decks, the copper chloride and arsenic treated lumber, it was treated to a .60. And what happened is they would take the units of lumber. I didn't always buy a unit. Sometimes I bought 2 or 3 units or a half a unit. But they would take the whole pallet of lumber, which was typically 10 boards wide and 36 boards high. So that would be 360 pieces of lumber. But they put that whole pallet into a big tube, a big giant pipe. It was a 6 or 8 foot diameter pipe. And it went in on a trolley. The unit sat on a trolley and it rolled into this pipe, and the pipe was about 30 feet long, and then a huge door closed on it, and the door bolted shut. And then what they did was they filled up the pipe with a treatment called copper chloride and arsenic. It was a fluid. It was as thin as paint thinner. They just filled it up almost right to the top, and then they put several thousand pounds of pressure, of air pressure, into the pipe, the top of the pipe. And that air pressure applied pressure to the chemical, and the chemical was pushed into the lumber. That's how pressure-treated lumber is made. And then that chemical stayed under pressure it depended on what the treatment process was. 0.60, maybe the lumber was treated for 24 to 30 hours for 0.60. But then 2-pound treatment might be 4 days of pressure treatment. I don't know what those numbers were. All I know is that 0.60, there was 0.40, 0.60, 1-pound treatment, 2-pound treatment, 2.5-pound treatment. That was as much of a treatment as you could get. And so let's say this board was treated 1-pound treatment and you cut it, you'd see the treatment, the green treatment, maybe 1/4 of an inch around the radius and the bottom. And the middle had no treatment. But if it was 2.5-pound treatment, this board, the whole thing would be green. In other words, it pushed enough material into the lumber to make the whole board green for 1.5 inches thick lumber. But not for a 4x6 or a 6x6. For a 4x6 or a 6x6, the lumber only, the impregnation of 2.5-pound treatment only went in about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. It never went much more than that. Except on poles. The poles that they put in the ground, like telephone poles, sometimes the treatment went in 2.5 or 3 inches on a pole, but only because the poles sat out in the yard for years sometimes before they were treated, and they dried up like a sponge. Then the treatment would go in 2.5 or 3 inches. But for the most part, anything thicker than a 4x4, the treatment only went in 1.5 inches around the outside, which was enough because the treatment stops the bugs from eating the lumber. But they determined that the treatment, they knew it from the beginning. It's arsenic, right? Copper chloride and arsenic. Every single load I ever got came with a warning page that said this lumber should be cut using a respirator and a paper suit, and also the sawdust should be discarded into a toxic waste environment, like, a toxic waste dump. Don't breathe in the dust And if the material is wet, and it was wet when it came from the factory, don't get it on your hands. Use rubber gloves under your leather gloves. They sent us the warning with it. Nobody ever heeded the warning. Nobody ever did. I mean, I worked with this stuff for 20 years. One thing I would do is when I cut a lot of lumbers, I use the 3M respirator. And I'd probably sometimes I'd wear a long sleeve shirt, but not always. And I don't know, it didn't really affect me that much. It made my fingers swell up when they were wet towards the end, towards when I was using it at the end. Eventually, it got to the point where I cannot use that lumber anymore. It made my hands numb. The treatment. In other words, it was accumulative, the thing that it did to your body. So now, if I handle pressure-treated lumber that's not painted, that I have from the 1990s, that I brought to the Philippines to use as scaffolding planks, not as building material, but scaffolding planks. If I handle that lumber, if I cut a piece of it and I handle the end grain, because my boards are all painted 4 coats of oil-based paint, but if I handle the end of the lumber, my fingertips get numb from the, I'm not, wouldn't call it an allergy, but I'm sensitive to the material. So the planks I got are simply for scaffold planks, because you can't buy a decent scaffold plank in the Philippines. And I had about 12 boards in America, pressure treated lumber, that I had in one of my storage units, and it was already painted, so I threw it in a container. So I have enough boards to make a couple of scaffold planks for scaffolding, but I would never use it inside a building because it's not a good lumber to use. They have other stuff now anyway. But I brought the lumber because that price of that lumber, I have 16-foot lengths of the lumber. The price of the lumber when I left in the 90s was like $3.75 a foot. So if I had 16-foot lengths, that would be 37, and again, half of that, 47.50. There's $60 pieces of lumber with the tax. And I had, 12 of them. So I wasn't going to throw out $800 worth of lumber. So I took them for the scaffold planks. But you can't, that stuff was so caustic that eventually the government made you stop using it. But the stuff they replaced it with is garbage. They replaced it with a kind of a wax, W-A-X. So now when you buy what they call pressure-treated lumber, it is a little green and it's a little yellow, more yellow than green. And when you grab it, it feels like wax because that's what it is. They're basically impregnating the wood with wax. I don't know what other chemical is in there. I never bothered because I don't build decks anymore. But that's what they have now. Now, in addition to nails to secure the lumber, I think this is going to be the last topic unless somebody has something to say. Pretty Boy Krakevich says, Fazio has forgotten more about dock and decks than anyone in the Philippines knows. He could do a 5,000 square foot with angled decking. Oh, I call it the hemlock procedure. Let's see. Okay, he could do a 5,000 square foot with angled decking. I'm having a little trouble with my cell phone here, which I shouldn't be having, but he could do a 5,000. That's odd. This thing with angled decking meeting in a diamond. I'm having a lot of trouble here. Meeting with a diamond design in the middle of the deck is what I think it said. That's really hard to do, but I have done that. And I have pictures of it, and I'll show you those pictures. And Pretty Boy Karkevic says, I will just say you people should be grateful for this stream. You are getting an advanced degree in deck and carpentry from a high-level expert. Thank you, Pretty Boy. For the price you pay, which is cheap at twice the price. Thank you, Pretty Boy. So, Marvelous Mark, the King of the Dark, welcome. There is no super chat button, Mr. Fazio. May I ask a construction question? Well, if you've been watching my uploads, there is a PayPal button if you feel like donating, but being that you are a long-term subscriber, I will answer your question. But for the other people that I don't know, and Marvelous Mark has many, many times donated to my super chat, and I thank him for that. So he is considered a long-term subscriber, and he's certainly treated me very well in the past. So Marvelous Mark, if I don't, I'm going to look for your question. Okay, here it is. Just wondering. Oh, damn it! I'm having trouble with my phone. Okay. View message. All right, I'm going to have to read it from a faded out. Just wondering why treated dimensional lumber is always so much heavier than standing lumber. Well, it's because I erased your message because, as I said, this new Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, it's not so easy to use. It does things that really piss me off a lot. It has the same problem that my Galaxy tablet had. If you put your finger, hover it over the screen, even a quarter of an inch away, for too long, it chooses that option. Sometimes. So what happened with Marvelous Mark's comment is I was reviewing the message and I had my finger over it, said hide this user on the channel, and now I can't get it back. And it removed him. So I can't even show. Maybe I could do it on my computer. Hold on, Marvelous Mark. I'm gonna switch accounts and then see if I can get you back using my computer, because this is an issue with the Samsung, that the Samsung Galaxy Tab did it, and now the Samsung S21 Ultra is also doing it. I'm not lying to you about that. This is not right, what it's doing. And now I can't get Marvelous Mark back on the page. And I called up. I did call up the Samsung store, and they are fully aware of the problem. Don't make any mistake about it. This is not something that happened just to me. This is in fact something that happened just to me. This is in fact a problem that they have with this phone. Even how to use the phone tutorials will tell you, if you hover your finger over the top of a button or an option too close for too long, it chooses that option. It's a flaw. It's one of the few flaws in the phone, but that's what just happened. So I can read your comment on my computer screen. Maybe you're back. Let's see. No, no, from that comment was hidden, and I can't. Maybe somebody else, pretty boy, maybe you could get Marvelous Mark back by unblocking him. Is that possible? Okay, so the question was, why is, from Marvelous Mark, the question was, why is the treated lumber so much heavier? Oh, wait a second. And the answer to that question is because it's impregnated. The density of an actual 2x6, let's say, the actual weight of a 2x6, I should tell you where the lumber comes from and how it's made, how it's grown, but the actual 2x6 white wood, white pine or yellow, not yellow pine, but white pine or hem fir, has only a moisture content of about, a good piece of lumber, 16 to 20%. When you pressure treat a piece of lumber, I told you it goes into the lumber. Now you have a moisture content of 50 to 60%, so it's almost twice the weight. That's the answer to Marvel. He is not blocked. Okay, so I did push the unblock button. Thank you, Dennis. Okay, I deleted the comment. Thank you, Dennis. I pasted the comment above. Thank you, Dennis. Okay, so region 6, pretty boy. I actually think most people would rather just pay someone to build their deck. Time is money, and typically they make more money at their day job than what the contractor charges. That's not true. That might be your opinion, and you're entitled to your opinion, but you don't want to pay me to build your deck. Thank you, Dennis. Typically, a carpenter makes $50 an hour. $50 an hour. When I went to New York last year in 2019, a year and a half ago, a guy who calls himself a carpenter, they were charging $50 an hour. Every labor that I wanted or needed in New York City or talked to about a project that I had in my house there, they all wanted $50 an hour as a base pay. So Region 6, for you to say that you probably make more than what it would cost the contractor to build your deck, I don't see that as a possibility. I don't know where you live, though, but it might be cheaper for you if you lived in the Philippines to hire somebody to build your deck. But in America, an actual licensed deck and dock builder pays the highest insurance rate per capita dollar than any other construction job except walking steel or the Sandhogs Union. The deck and dock builders, workmen's compensation, it was 50% of the salary of a deck and dock builder with all the tags and everything to do. So if you wanted to hire a licensed deck and dock building contractor, you'd be paying somewhere over $60 an hour for the carpenters, not the business. And then plus the foreman, and I was a working foreman, so because I owned the company, but you wouldn't pay me, you wouldn't see me on a job for less than $60 an hour. So I think that your idea, your comment makes sense if you're in certain places, and you're going to hire an unlicensed contractor. But then, of course, if they get hurt, isn't that your responsibility? So all my jobs were done with full insurance and full protection for the men and for the job. I had $1 million insurance policy. Because to monkey somebody up with a 6x6 that's 24 feet long, it monkeys you up real good. So you don't want to pay a real deck and dock builder's wages. Now, if you go and you hire, there's a couple of people that still do work in Jamaica Bay. If the truth lady is here, she worked for one of my competitors, Don, but he was actually one of my friends as well. And we made a lot of money. We made a lot of money. So Don, Region 6. I think Region 6 actually has something to do about the Philippines. It's isn't that on that island? I've never been to that place. What do they call that? The island where there's Region 1, Region 2, Region 3. You might be able to hire somebody there cheaper than American dock builders, but you're not going to hire a real deck and dock builder's not coming to your house for $20 an hour, dude. I had, when I worked, forget the crane and the barge and forget the pile driving unit. When I came to your job, I had $5,000 worth of deck and dock building tools in my truck. Okay? Now you could get a small unlicensed, uninsured Mexican company where they come with a skill saw and a hammer and nails, but you're not going to get that cheap. So in Region 6, what was the name of that? There is a place in the Philippines that they call Region 6. Ah, okay, you are correcting. If you make more than $60 an hour, why would you build the deck yourself? Well, that's true. That's true. Why would you? You wouldn't. Or you might do it just for a hobby, but it's 2021. Okay. Case of beer is $20. Okay, so you understand prices. Thank you for that. Region 6 is in Iloilo. So yeah, if you make $60 an hour, well, of course it would pay for you in the Philippines to hire somebody. But in America is where 95% of the people that watch my live streams are listening to this from America, Region 6. So they have very little option but to do it themselves. So in the Philippines, a lot of people, Region 6, ask the same question you just asked. Why am I taking the time to set up my job? And because I want it done right. And I can't explain to a local carpenter to do this. It's going to take me as long to show them what I want done than it takes me to do it. It's going to take longer. And then, of course, there's the language barrier. So, and of course, there's that Philippines time thing. So it's easier for me to do this setting up of the job myself. I may just decide to do the entire job all by myself. Of course, it's going to take a long time, but theoretically, not as long as some people believe it will take, because once I have my equipment set up, if I just went out and hired a crew, which I have interviewed multiple crews to do this job, they all fail miserably. They all fail. in one way or another. One contractor that I knew for 5 years as a friend and a neighbor, he changed the price from 12,000 pesos per square meter to 18,000 pesos per square meter a year later. And the materials hadn't gone up that much. He just realized that I was an American and I could pay more, based on some things that he saw me, or that we talked about, or I showed him videos of my house in America. So the price went up 50%. That guy's gone. He's gone. But believe me, plus he's gone because the cheap bastard, I took him out to dinner, him and his wife. He ended up bringing 3 secretaries instead of his wife. And then when the bill came, he went to the bathroom and disappeared for 20 plus minutes. That guy's gone. Other contractors that I've interviewed, they don't want to use power tools. They bend the rebar by hand. And every ring, every rung, every hoop, every loop is a different size. So it takes 3 times longer to tie the wire on it. None of them have a rebar bender. And none of them are going to use a skill saw. None of them would agree to use a skill saw to cut the sheets for the formwork or to build the forms. They all say we do this Philippines way with a handsaw. I'm not going to do it like that. Every board is a different size. Every hoop is a different size. Every loop, every ring is a different size. Every bend is a different bend, 90 degrees, 88 degrees, 93 degrees. And then 10 men on a pipe, not 10 men, but 5 men on a 10-foot pipe to bend 32 bar for the foundations. I'm not going to have 5 men on a 10-foot pipe bending rebar when they have rebar bending cutting machines. And then they will not cut. They cut the rebar with a hacksaw. Still, to this day, what I could do, I'm going to need 5,000 hoops for the hotel. That's 5,000 minutes. But Philippines people will take 50,000 minutes to do that. And they'll all be different sizes. I'm not working like that. So getting back to Region 6, they ask me why I do the work myself. Is because theoretically, once I start the actual building of forms, let's say I have to, we're getting off the deck and dock building subject, but let's just say I have to build forms and I have to cut 30 pieces of lumber, plywood lumber, 16 inches in width. I could do that in an hour. A Filipino with a handsaw couldn't do it in 35 or 40 hours. So it pays if you're in the Philippines to do certain things by hand, but not always. So Region 6 brings up a good point. If he's making good money here in the Philippines, it pays to hire Philippines. Thank you, Region 6. It's a great question. That's right. 99% of the population would hire somebody. Okay, let's see if we can find that. My comment was directed to someone in the chat. I was explaining that 99% of the population would hire someone rather than build it themselves. If they could afford it, that's exactly true. Exactly true. But in today's world, Region 6, think about this now. There's no more work. There's no more income for a lot of people. So if they wanted a deck now, with no income coming in, it might be better for them to hire somebody. Dennis is talking to Region 6. Treated lumber has been treated under pressure, so it's still wet when you buy it from a big box store. That's correct. And you want to buy it wet because it's a lot easier to work with wet, even though it's heavier, than when it's dry. Region 6, what is a good price and what is not a good price? No, I don't think 18,000 pesos per square meter is a good price. You are a rich man, Region 6, making more than $60 an hour. I don't think 18,000 pesos per square meter. It depends on how you're building. I don't think that's a good price. I could do it for 10,000 pesos per square meter when that price was given to me. I mean, I could do it by myself for 10,000 pesos. Originally, and that would be my labor doing it my way with insurances for the building and for the product. But that guy just... No, all right, Region 6, you're in a different class, okay? You're a rich guy. 10,000, 18,000 pesos. When the building next door to me was built, it was built for 8,000 pesos. That was 7 years ago. Then 4 years ago, he wanted 12, and then he changed it to 18 for no reason, just because he saw my house in America. Let's just stop talking about that now because it has nothing to do with deck and dock building. So that is, in fact, my way of asking you to stop right now, immediately. Please stop talking about the price of a square foot in the hotel business in the Philippines. You will not be asked twice. Do not ask me another question about building in the Philippines. Do not ask me another question about the cost of building in the Philippines. That's not today's topic. If you don't understand what I just said, I'll remove you from the chat. I asked you nice. I asked you twice. You changed the topic. I don't want to be trolled on my channel. And you are, in fact, in my opinion, trolling me on my channel. So stop, and stop now. Thank you. Okay, so getting back to why you would want to use the lumber wet as opposed to the lumber dry is because it's easier to cut, number one. When a piece of pressure treated lumber gets dry, it gets so hard. This is the copper chloride and the arsenic. It gets so hard, it's almost impossible to put a nail through it, especially at the end of the lumber, right at the end, right there. If you were to put a nail, a galvanized nail, into, if this was a 2x6, and you made the mistake, and it would be a mistake, if you made the mistake of putting this piece of lumber flush with the fascia board, and that would be a big mistake. You do not want to do that. If you made that mistake, you would regret it every day, every time you walked out on the deck and saw what happened 6 months to a year from now. If the lumber was wet when you put it on the deck, if the lumber was wet, and you put it flush with the fascia board, like that, and you put these 3 nails in, like I told you, on an angle, maybe, and just maybe, most of the time you would make the mistake, everybody would make the mistake of putting the nail straight down into the lumber like that, about 3/4 of an inch from the end of the lumber. And if it was wet, it probably would go into this lumber and through the lumber, not split the wood, not split the wood. But when this lumber dried, every nail that was 3/4 of an inch from the end of the lumber, every nail, every end of every board would split from the end of the board to the nail. Okay? Now, if you had to put the board flush with the fascia board, what you would do is put the nail on the inside like this, on inside here. And you'd want to drive that nail down on an angle about 2 inches back from the face. That would most likely keep the wood from splitting. But you'd have to be very good at nailing, because what you'd want to do is you'd want to have this nail come down right into the corner of this board. But then that splits the edge of this board. Not a good thing to do. Not over a long period of time. So the ideal way to make a deck is to just take one joist and put it, sister it up onto your fascia board like that, and let the boards extend over the outside edge of the deck like this. So you'd have 1.5 inches of board extending over the joist. This works to preserve and save the life of the deck big time, because this board now acts as an umbrella to not let water get onto the top of the joist to some degree. Snow, ice, stuff like that. But also, now you can put the nail in the lumber, and you're back 3 inches from the end. It won't split the board. That's very important that you listen to what I just said to you. It's harder to build the deck. It's harder to put the railings on the deck this way. It takes more time to do it this way, but it doesn't split the board at the end of the day. Okay, so that would be how you'd want to have your fascia board on there. Now we're going to go to people that make the mistake of painting where they think they're saving the lumber from the sun or the weather. Okay, so this pressure-treated lumber is treated against rotting and termites and bugs, even with the waxy surface. But if you want to add something to it, you want to treat the lumber, you do not want to put paint on these boards. You don't want to put paint on these boards. You could, if you know how to paint it, but you would have to wait several months for the lumber to dry in the sun before you could put paint on it properly. If you put paint on wet pressure-treated lumber, it's just going to blister right off in really short time, a couple of weeks, a month. You can't put oil-based paint on a piece of wet pressure-treated lumber because it's got a latex base or water-based treatment. Well, it's actually oil, but paint won't stick to it. You can't put latex paint on it because paint won't stick to the treatment process. So you got to wait for this lumber to dry if you want to paint it. Then when you're going to paint it, You got to let it dry 100% out in the sun. Maybe you won't be able to paint it till next year, and then you want to use 25% turpentine with an oil-based paint as your prime coat. What you don't want to do is paint over wet lumber. I don't care if it's oil-based paint that you're using or latex. Let's say you had a board that's not pressure treated and you want to paint over it. Not a good thing to paint lumber the way people think they believe they know how to paint lumber, and I'll go into that in a minute. But what you want to do for a pressure treated deck is what you want to do for a pressure treated deck, and you can do it 6 or 7 weeks after you build the deck. You can buy a product called CFW, Charlie CWF. That I made a mistake. It's called CWF. CWF. Charlie Whiskey Foxtrot. CWF. Ultraviolet deck preservative. CWF. Charlie Whiskey Foxtrot deck preservative. They still sell it in Home Depot. I saw it out when I was in New York a year and a half ago. I'm going to tell you something about that product. That product made my decks from 1981 still a viable deck to walk on and to use on a daily basis. So that is the only product I would ever suggest to use, CWF. I don't care if you have to order it in from another state or another country. That would be the only product I would use. Now, it is deadly to put that stuff on. You do not want to breathe it. You need to have a paper suit. You need to have a respirator, face mask, a hat, a hood, gloves, and boots. That stuff is deadly. You get that stuff on your arm and it feels like lye soap or lye. It burns your arm. It burns your eyes. It burns your skin. It makes your body feel like somebody threw you in an oven. But after 6 months and your deck is dry, or after one season, it's like water. You put it in a paint sprayer and you could spray it. You could spray underneath the joists, and the capillary action will make the product go in tight under the joists. You spray it underneath. It just goes on like water, but you got to tape off the house, and there's a reason for that. And then you could spray it on top and make sure you get it into the nail holes or the screw holes on the top of the lumber. 2 coats. 2 coats on anything that's facing the sun or the weather. 1 coat. If the sun doesn't hit it, it doesn't get rained on, 1 coat is more than enough. But you got to tape off the house with plastic. You can't let that stuff get on to vinyl siding or your vinyl Anderson windows. You can't let it go on there. It don't come off. It doesn't. There's nothing that takes it off. It bonds into the vinyl and turns the vinyl a rusty color brown. You don't want to do that. Now, getting back to the people that think they know how to paint a piece of wood. A lot of people, let me see, Dennis Adams made a comment. Yeah, that would make a little bit of a difference if You knew you were going to look at the tip of the. I can't even see the tip of a nail without my glasses anymore. But you really don't want to concern yourself with the diamond head of a nail. That's just an extra process. You just want to do it. What I do to the nails is I just take a hammer if it's close to the edge of the wood and I just smash it down flat. Then it bashes its way through the lumber. Okay, so the CWF product is the only product I would use. Now, people make the mistake of painting lumber, and they don't understand that they were taught wrong, they learned wrong, they didn't learn from a proper source or an actual intellectual basis of why to paint lumber and how. They were taught wrong. Most people were taught wrong about painting lumber. If you have a board like this, and it's a fascia board, what you'd want to do, if you were going to paint it, is paint. Now, I don't like latex-based paint. I never did. It's good for very few things other than sheetrock. After that, I can't think of a use for latex-based paint. It's just basically it's a worthless product for me. So I use oil base. But if you did use latex, it's just a worthless paint. If you had a deck and you painted it with latex paint, it would chip up or flake off. But for a fascia board, some people want to paint the fascia board. What they do is they just take it right out of the can and they put it on the board all the way around, and then they put it on the end grain. That's the wrong thing to do with lumber when it comes to painting. I don't care who taught you how to do it. It's wrong. Lumber has to breathe. So I don't use latex paint. Latex paint is good for concrete, but we're talking about wood. I don't use latex paint for anything. Slopping it down on the floor to paint the floor, just to brighten up the floor, to make it white. Cheap latex-based paint. Because you're in the house, or you're in a house, or in something that you don't want to have the stench of oil-based paint for a month or 2 months, because it takes a long time for the thinnest to go out of the oil-based paint. But when you're painting a board, oil-based paint, you thin out the first coat 25% turpentine, not not mineral spirits and not kerosene, turpentine. That's the only thing you ever want to use to thin out oil-based paint, or varnish for that matter. You thin it out 25% and you paint the whole board. Now, this is a fascia board, right? And it went to the joists. The inside that goes to the joist, that's it. The wood is done. 25% one coat of thinner on the inside. It's a finished product. But now, you could paint the top, the side, and the bottom. That protects the lumber from the rain that's coming from the top, the rain and the sun that's going to hit it, and the water that sits at the bottom of the beam. But the inside, you do not paint the inside because it stops the wood from breathing. When it stops the wood from breathing, where water does go into the wood, it expands and blows the paint off the lumber. That's just the right way to paint a fascia board. If you have a deck, you do not paint all four sides with a finished coat of paint, latex or oil base. You only put one coat on the inside of the fascia board. And now, if you can't use nails to put something together, this is the last step here. You're probably going to want to use bolts to bolt the posts together with. Now, there's two types of bolts. There's a hex head bolt like this, And I have an exaggerated size washer because I couldn't find my 1/2 inch galvanized washer. But this is a 1/2 inch galvanized bolt. If you just put the bolt up against, if you just put the bolt up against the lumber like this, like that, and you tighten the nut on the other side down, you're going to pull the nut, the top of the bolt, right through the wood or crush it. It's going to be disastrous. You want to have a big washer on there, on this side, and a big washer on the nut side. Oversized, we call it oversized washer. That's if you're using a hex head bolt. That's probably all you're going to be able to get where you live. But there is another kind of bolt that you don't need washers for. So if you're doing a job and you're bolting posts to the fascia board, which is what you're going to bolt those to, you're going to want to have a big washer on the head side, like that, oversized washer on the head, and an oversized washer on the nut sides. And I usually double up the bottom washer. Now that gets time consuming, it gets expensive, and it gets to where you have to set the bolts up. It's a little bit difficult, but that's how you want to do that. You never want to put the head of a bolt up against a piece of wood, because as soon as you apply pressure from the nut side, it's going to pull the bolt right into the wood like that. It's going to sink it in. You got to remember, these wet boards are going to shrink 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch for a 4x6 or a 4x4. So you got to use double washers or oversized washers, and then you have to apply a lot of pressure to where the washer is sinking into the lumber and actually bowing out like cupping. That's how much pressure you want to put on there. And then a month or two later, you have to go and tighten up all those nuts because the wood shrank that much. But you need to have these oversized washers. Unless where you live, which probably is few and far between, unless they have a product called the timber bolt. Now this is the bolts that we use to build bulkheads with. Now this bolt is 24 inches long, hot dip galvanized. But the timber bolt has a natural head that's big, so you don't need washers on the inside. And they make these timber bolts in every size, from 1/2 inch by 4 inches long to, I have this bolt, this is a 3/4 inch bolt, 24 inches long, but I also have timber bolts that are 1 inch in diameter and 30 inches long. I think I still have some of those, but I've used them 1 inch, 30 inches long, where the head of that timber bolt would be much bigger. It would be about 3 inches. And that's for building large decks and docks. So you don't want to have double washers if you don't want to have double washers like this. If you don't want to have double washers like this, on this side, you're going to get a timber bolt. T-I-M-B-R-E. Timber or T-I-M-B-E-R. Probably there's just, you might be able to Google it. I don't know. They might have it on Amazon for all I know. But back in the 1980s and the 90s, there was just one supplier in America that sold timber bolts. Actually, there was two. One was a hardware sales in New York City, but they imported their timber bolts from China. I did not order timber bolts from that company unless I just needed a couple of thousand bolts for a job I was doing, and nobody else had them. And then another company was where I bought my lumber from, out in Long Island. They had timber bolts that were made in America, hot-dipped galvanized timber bolts. This one is not made from that company. This is a Chinese timber bolt. How do I know? Because it doesn't have the name on the end of the bolt. The American company put their name on the end of the bolt. Timber bolts, this bolt would be, these hot-dip galvanized bolts that were 5 inches long cost about $1, with the nut and the washer, $1.50. The timber bolt with just the nut and one small washer for the nut size, with the timber bolt head, they were about $2 a piece, so they were 25% more. But it had this wide head on it, which saved you the time of putting a washer on there, and also it saved you the... Actually, it looks better to just have one big head of a bolt. It actually works better, it looks better, it's a better job. So that's the last of how to build a deck, aside from the fact that you need a lot of tools, drills, like oh yeah, I forgot about this. The drill bit for these timber bolts. This is a 3/4 inch timber bolt. I told you this is not a big bolt. It's a big bolt for you, but for me, it was what a standard, on a standard job I would use, I don't know, 75 to 100 of these. But then there was a bigger size. This is 1 inch timber bolts. And then you need a drill bit like this. That was 36 inches long. And of course you'd need a 3/4 inch Milwaukee drill. They were, in $1980, $800. So if you really got into the deck and dock building business, you needed a serious amount of money, and this drill bit is $125. $125. You could buy them for about $60, but not this quality. And if you're drilling a hole through a timber, through 30 inches of timber, with a cheap drill bit, and it snaps, oh boy, you're going to have to drill next to it. You're not going to get the drill bit out without a lot of work. I mean, maybe you could take the two boards apart and back it off with a Stilson wrench, but you want to have a good drill bit. So this was $125, and a cheap one is $60. So you really need to have some serious amount of tools. Yeah, okay, you're right, Dennis. The timber bolts also have a plus to them, is that underneath the head of the bolt, which I forgot, and Dennis reminded me, thank you. Underneath the head of the bolt has 4 spurs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? It has 4 little spurs that come off it. So when you put this bolt in the hole, you can tap it with a block of wood. You don't want to hit this with a hammer. You don't want to knock the galvanizing off the head of the timber bolt. You don't want to do that. But you could use a hard block of wood and a hammer and, knock it in. Those little spurs, they lock into the wood, and that prevents the bolt from turning when you're tightening down on the nut. Although typically, even though this is a 3/4 bolt, you would not use a 3/4 drill. You would be in a world of doo-doo if you used a 3/4 drill for a 3/4 bolt. you would have to pound this bolt through the lumber. Because when you're drilling, as soon as you drill through it, the hair on the inside of the hole opens up like that. And if it got wet overnight, you'd never get the bolt in. You'd have to beat the bolt in with a 10-pound hammer. So what you'd want to do for a 3/4 bolt is drill a 7/8 inch hole. Then you could slip the bolt in by hand. So you always have to go 1/8 of an inch bigger for the bigger bolts than you need for a drill bit. And maybe a 1/16 of an inch bigger for a 1/2 inch bolt, but minimum 1/16 of an inch. Depends on the lumber. If it's really soft lumber, you need a bigger hole. Use a 7/8 auger. That's right. That's exactly right. You'd use a 7/8 auger bit for a 3/4 inch, and this would be, well, this is 1 1/8 auger bit, but this is an auger drill bit. It has this tip. When you start screwing it in, this sucks the tip of the drill into the lumber, and then after that, the drill and the pressure that you apply to the drill drills it into the hole. This is an auger bit. As instrumentally use a 7/8 auger. That's correct. You'd use a 1/8 inch bigger bolt. If for an inch bolt, you'd use 1 1/8 inch. For 1 1/4 inch, 1 3/8 inch. Now I have all of those bits. There's no reason for me to have those anymore. But I have them because I paid $150 for those bits. And when I had a garage sale in America, people were offering me like $1 for a $150 drill bit. And they knew what you used it for. They actually did that kind of work. So I said, nah, I'll just keep them. And I did. And I even have bolts that are, I think I have them. I have some bolts that are 4 feet long, 1 3/8 inches. That's a big bolt. But and I used those too, but that was for stuff that we did for the union, Dock Builders Union. I never had anything that big on my job. But those bolts, I think I have 2 of them somewhere. I don't know where they are. They're in if I have them still, they're in a box. And if I don't have them, I probably scrapped out a $100 bolt for like 30 cents worth of metal. So when stuff that I had in America, 4-foot bolts, I had like 50 of them. And I will never use them. I used them for ornaments on jobs I did in the Florida Keys. And in America, I would hang one like on a fascia board of a deck. Just give it to the customer. I got them from the Dock Builders Union, so I didn't really care. I didn't pay for them. And I didn't steal them. They just, at the end of the job, you have no idea what we used to throw into the ocean. As a dock, in the Dock Builders Union, if you had those 4-foot bolts, you'd order them by the ton, or you'd order like these timber bolts. You didn't order like 50 timber bolts. You ordered a barrel. They came in barrels in the 80s. These actually came in barrels. The 6-inch bolts came in barrels too. The nuts came in boxes. The washers came in boxes, but the bolts came in barrels. Regular wooden barrels with rings on them, like a wine barrel. So in the Dock Builders Union, if we ordered, I don't know, I don't know how many bolts we ordered to build a boardwalk in New Jersey or something like that. And at the end of the job, if there were 5 barrels of bolts left over, the foreman would just walk around and say, who wants this stuff? for free. Nobody was stealing anything. They can't send it back, and they're not going to store it. It didn't pay to store that stuff. Now, sometimes some things paid to store if they had another job coming up, but if they didn't have another job, even if they had another job coming up, it was a government job, they had to throw the stuff out so they could spend the money on the next job. The foreman would just come around and say, who wants this and who wants that? I remember burying. I remember the company took Charlie, the excavator, the guy who operated the heavy equipment, told him to dig a hole big enough on the job site, big enough. The hole was big enough to drive a tractor trailer with a 53-foot box on the back of the tractor trailer. So that would be 60 something feet long, 18 or 20 feet wide, and 12 feet deep. Told them to dig a hole like that. And the foreman said, his name was Al, the foreman said, does anybody want this steel? And there was 50 tons of rebar left over from, it was the prison system that the Rikers Island prison system. We did the foundations, and there was about 50 tons of steel, all sizes, up to 2-inch rebar. And the foreman just said, does anybody want this steel? What are we going to do what are you going to do with 50 tons of steel? I mean, even if you were a contractor, could you use a 2-inch rebar? Could you even pick it up? So nobody wanted it, and we buried the guy backed the tractor trailer, one tractor trailer flatbed. They put the cab on it, and backed the tractor trailer up to the hole, back, and they put a cable on it with we had the Coring 666, the Coring Traco there, with a 6-yard bucket, and he just put a cable on the rebar and just pulled it into the hole, and then a forklift came with the rest of the material that was on dunnage, and we just threw the dunnage and the rebar into a hole, and everything else we didn't use on that job went into the hole. Every nail and whatever the guys didn't want to take home, it just went into the job. Not the lumber. The lumber, somebody took all the lumber. I did not. I had no use for it at the time. But somebody would always take the lumber. Usually that disappeared first. But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now, the guy, Region 6, thank you for not continuing along trying to get me side. I don't think you were doing it on purpose, and if you are, shame on you. But whatever you were doing it for, it was not the subject matter, and that's how we're going to deal with going off topic. You got me on that one for a little while, but and you got me because the question was legitimate, but it's not the topic matter. So what I'm going to talk about in my next live stream might be how to, well, I was going to talk about how to prepare how to build a break wall or a rock wall in front of your property, and then how to properly line the rocks behind on the dirt side or the property side of the wall. That's a pretty interesting topic, and I have pictures of that. If I can find the pictures, I think that'll be my next subject. because there's a lot more to building a rock wall barrier on your property, because a lot of places you couldn't build a wooden wall because of the chemicals in the treated lumber. So they wanted you to use what they call a riprap wall, retaining wall. Well, it was kind of like a bulkhead. You could call it a retaining wall. That would be correct. Thank you. But most of the jobs that were built from retaining walls, people did not build them properly, and they don't work. And they don't work fast. And they don't work. And you have to rip out the entire yard for 15 feet from behind what instrumentally calls a retaining wall, or a bulkhead, or a rock wall, a riprap wall, retaining wall. Yeah, that's probably, I've been out of the business for 20 years, so yeah, that might be the right word. Thank you. So you would find out really fast, because the plans, when I used to build retaining walls or a riprap bulkhead, the plans would call for one layer of membrane. We won't talk about that job now, but that would be a mistake. And I'll show you how to cheat on that a little bit to make that wall last a little longer. But I built a break wall. I built a break wall that was behind, I forgot the name of the hotel. I built it in Key Largo. One hurricane, I think it was Hurricane, maybe it was Katrina. It was in 2003 or 2004. I forgot the hurricane. One hurricane destroyed this wall. I mean, and the wall was close to 1,000 feet long. I mean, it beat the wall to death. The wall fell apart. So I came in with a stupid low price, actually. So much for the labor, and you buy the materials. And they put it up to the board of directors. And Don, the guy's name was Don, he was in charge of the hotel's projects. Don and I talked about how it would be built. And of the 3 or 4 contractors in the Florida Keys that built retaining walls or break walls, this was a break wall, not a retaining wall. Don told the board of directors that this is the guy you want to use. Plus, they saved like $80,000 because that's what the other contractors wanted. They wanted $110,000 for their labor plus materials, and they weren't going to use as many trucks of materials as I used, and I used well over 100 trucks, and I think I made, it's hard for me to remember the numbers, but I used 9 or 10 13-yard trucks of concrete pumped out to the end of the break wall to the shoreline, and more than 100 truckloads of rock and fill to rebuild the wall. And it was after the hurricane, so they were giving out emergency permits. And I did the entire job from the day I met Don to the day I finished the job. I never hired another man to do 1 minute's work on the job. Not 1 minute, not 1 hour of labor, nothing. I did all the pumping, pumped the hose on my shoulder, and I think I made, in 34 days, I think I made $60-something thousand on the labor alone, for the month, $60-something thousand to do the labor, and then I made money on the materials as well. So I ended up making about $75,000 for 34 days work, with a clause in the contract that I would have the job done before the 4th of July, which wouldn't interfere with the regatta in the Florida Keys. And I had 60 days to do the job. So there was a clause in the contract for $100 a day, which is what there should be in a real contract, a penalty clause. But there would be a bonus if I finished the job in less than 60 days, and that included in the 60-something thousand dollars that I made. The materials were something else altogether. The materials were, there was an additional price fee that I made on the materials because I estimated the trucks of materials at 100 truckloads of 18-yard truckloads of material. But it was an additional fee for each truckload. So my estimate was about right. It was right around 100 truckloads, but I made money on the materials as well. I'm entitled to make money on the materials because I'm the licensed, insured excavation contractor on the job. So that was a nice job. I forgot the name of it. I'll look. If I can find the pictures for that job, I will show them to you. And I do have video of that job. If I can find, I really should try to find the video for that job. This is going back a long time. I know I have pictures. I believe I have some video, because this is going back into the early 2000s. I did have a video camera back then, but not a good one, and I didn't have it for a long period of time. I bought a brand new one. It lasted a few months. It broke. So that'll be my next topic, break walls and or retaining walls. Thank you, Instrumedley, I think that's the proper terminology, but it's been a long time since I did this work. But I will tell you how to do it properly. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, this is how the channel is going to work. If a person wants to break my concentration, like that guy Region 6 did, he should have hit the PayPal button, because he did sidetrack me. And it is in the options where if you want to ask an off-topic question, to send me a PayPal. Money talks and baloney walks. You have to remember that. In real life, too. Money talks and baloney walks. So with that, I will say goodbye. And thank you, everybody, for coming. And if you want to talk off topic, I should have given Region 6 the opportunity, but I already know. I've seen him before. He's not very generous. Although he makes more than $60 an hour in the Philippines, he could have greased my palm. He could have persuaded me to change the topic matter, and I didn't allow him the opportunity, because he's read the rules. The rules are stay on topic or hit the PayPal button, and for the right persuasion, for the right amount of greasing, I will change the topic. So Region 6, if you're still out there and you do it again, I hope I remember to ask you to hit the PayPal button. Thanks very much for stopping by, everyone. And Dennis Adams, absolutely. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. Thanks for watching, everybody. And it's a beautiful day in the Philippines. Now, I will tell you one more thing. I've been offline for the last, I don't remember the last time I did a video. I have made a video every day. My friends, Patreon members, and my good friends have received, I think in the last 7 days, I think I made 5 videos. I think I forgot to send one of those videos out. I'll have to look in my mail. It wasn't an important video, but my good friends my Patreon members and my Super Chat members from the Hoodwinked by an Angel. The ones have been very generous and kind to me in the past. They got a copy. Now, I wish to talk about one more thing. It's in regards to trolls. Because I said there would be no trolls allowed, and Region 6, he slipped in there with a great question. But a troll. What is a troll? A troll is someone that has a name on a screen. I don't know if you could find any videos on Region 6 as Region 6. If we looked him up, I wonder what would happen. Region 6, he has an orange, R as in Romeo, icon. Let's see what happens. Just what I thought. He's a troll. He has no channel that shows up. And he broke my concentration and he got away with it for free. I am ashamed of myself for not catching that sooner. He did change the topic without hitting the PayPal button. Woe is Region 6. Be on the lookout. A bolo, be on the lookout for Region 6 in future videos. I'm sending out a notice. Region 6, he did troll my channel. Whether intentional or not, he trolled my channel. I want to check my email. Maybe I didn't. Wait a second. Wait, he trolled my channel. I want to check my email. Maybe I didn't. Let me see what happened in my. Why is this? Shut up. Quiet. It won't shut off. There it goes. Let me check my email. I want to check my email for. Why won't this stop? Stop. Okay. All right, so we did get a notice. I just want you to know that I haven't done a video on my leg, on the actual progress of the healing of my leg. And I got an email back from someone I did send the video out to. Thank you very much. Thank you not only for watching my channel, but thank you for the always positive and complimentary comments. And thank you for your generosity in wisdom to help me with my leg. And we will not mention any names, but I do appreciate that. So I haven't mentioned how my leg is doing, but let's go back to trolls. Region 6, I can't find this channel. So if he comes back and he wants to send a link for his channel, he could do that. And then I'll take a look at his channel. But a troll is typically someone that wants to remain anonymous, but wants to get involved with as the great Palmer says, the jibber jabber. The jibber jabber on YouTube. That is not going to be tolerated or allowed. Because he posed such an intelligent question, he did sidetrack me. He trolled me. He got me off topic because he knows if he's on this channel, he read the notices to not troll me, not change the topic. And he did it, and he probably did it on purpose. Because I've mentioned it, do not troll my channel, do not change the topic, and in every one. So he's walking around going, yay, I trolled Fazio. I'm about ready to block the guy. That's how I feel about that. In fact, I might just do that. So a troll is somebody that has nothing on their channel or some worthless video like the guy from yesterday that got blocked, Mike. He had 3 absolutely useless videos on his channel of fish from five years ago. And he came on saying, how come you're always in your work clothes? If you're a contractor, why are you always dirty? Why don't you just double charge the clients for your time? Well, I wasn't that kind of contractor. I'm a working man. I'm a working contractor, working foreman. In the dock builders union, foremans worked. And when I owned heavy equipment, I operated the heavy equipment. I was a working foreman. Even when I did carpentry, I was the foreman on the job. I worked. I cut. I measured. I laid out. The men put the stuff together. I didn't haul the material over to the saw. I didn't route the lumber. I didn't do a lot of the work. I didn't set the tools up in the morning, and I didn't put the tools away at the end of the day. I had men to do that, but I did the work. But Mike, he had to throw in, why are you living in a container? So he got blocked. I'm living in a container because right now, I'm going to open up the shade. Might get a little funky in here. Right now, I am actually looking, see the notice? I am actually looking at a white sand beach and the Bohol Sea. That's why I live where I live. And next year, at this time, hopefully I'll be living, I believe, if everything goes well, I believe I'll be living on a corner of the second floor. Well on my way to having rentals. Very close to it. Having some rentals on the ground floor. So, but Mike, he was very sarcastic. So what I did was I opened up his comment on my alpha male videos and I blocked him. And then I went to Hoodwinked by an Angel and I blocked him on there as well. However, I didn't remove his comment. His comment may still be there, but he is blocked. So what he gained from that, I don't know. He insulted me, and yet who is Mike? Who is Mike Ross? Who is Mike Ross? Who is really Mike Ross? He's a troll. There will be no tolerance for trolls. I will block you with both channels, and the next time Region 6 comes on, if he changes the topic, I'll tell him, you need to really smash that PayPal button if you want to change the subject matter. Otherwise, I'll just remove his comments. And he's allowed to comment on the material that's being discussed, but not allowed to comment changing the subject in the chat window as well. So these people have no content. They have no way of addressing who they are in real life. They have no videos up. They have no accolades to their life, who they are, what they do. Region 6 came up with a story that it would be better to hire somebody to do the work and cheaper. In the Philippines, that's true, but most of my clients that watch my channel are in America. So his story really didn't hold water, and then I caught that he was trolling me. He did it on purpose. Believe me, I tell you, it won't happen again. I don't know why he did it. He read the introduction, no trolls allowed, and he did it. He got away with it. You got to give him credit for that, but I don't have to let him come on my channel anymore at all. And I may not do that. It's my choice, my channel. I'll run it the way I want. There will be no trolls talking about anything other than the subject matter that I chose for the day. There won't be trolls talking about what other people are doing on their channels, what they're doing with their lives, what their lifestyles. It's not going to happen. You mention a blogger in a negative content, immediately you will be, not just, your comment won't just be removed, but I will block you, personally block your channel. So if you are watching this video and looking for to abuse somebody. And Lord knows there is enough reason, if you watch the YouTube community, to justify some abuse. It's not going to be tolerated. Now, in addition to the subject matter that I choose to talk to for the day, or for this, or for any particular live stream, in addition to the topic matter, what I will be doing now that which is why I bought the Samsung camera. Get out the troll spray. Okay, so all right, so I'll just yeah, I couldn't find him either, Dennis. So let's just make Region 6 invisible. Let's make him invisible. Invisible, I say. Hide user on this channel. Region 6, 2 thumbs up, you sidetracked me. 2 thumbs up, you trolled me. And 2 thumbs up, you don't have any content on your channel, or we can't find it. So 2 thumbs up, hit the road, Jack. Literally, hit the road, Jack. Literally, hit the road, Jack. And don't come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. So another definition, Region 6 is gone, by the way. Another definition of a troll is a person with a left-handed complement. A left-handed complement would be Mike Ross. How come if you were a contractor? Questioning whether or not I was a contractor, that's enough to get you blocked in and of itself. I have more licenses than most people could comprehend. But then why are you always dirty? I'm a working contractor. I'm a working foreman. I work for a living. I like doing the work. I like doing the work because when I explain to people how to do the work, typically it still doesn't get done the way I want it to get done. Now, I would hire a plumber, a licensed plumber, because they do licensed plumbing by code. I would hire a licensed electrician to do my jobs because they were licensed electrician and they work to code. But to teach somebody carpentry in 6 or 7 months and to have him build a deck, I'd lose money every time. So I did the work myself. But Mike Ross, he had to go one step further and then say, why are you living in a shipping container? I just explained it to you. Right now, I'm looking at a white sand beach and the Bohol Sea. And I don't see anybody on the beach. Not a good tide. And it's midday. But that's why I live where I live. Now, had he posed the question a little differently, like, it's a shame that you have to live in a shipping container. You live in such a beautiful area. Maybe your hotel, when will it be done? But no, he had to be sarcastic. No more sarcasm, not on this channel. So, if you don't have content on your channel, I'm going to probably go look and probably block you. Now, if you have something constructive to add, like that guy, that one guy added a really good comment. Instrumentally, he knew the word 7/8 auger, and he used the word retaining wall. He may even be in that business. I don't know, but he helped me. Thank you. But anybody else is has to have a channel before I'm going to have a conversation with you. You don't have to have a conversation like instrumentally to add something to the conversation. But if you have a question that doesn't have anything to do with the topic matter, I'm seriously thinking about just not allowing you to be seen on my channel. I asked for a specific set of rules. I'm doing topic matter on a specific thing. Region 6, not only did he get into a quasi-argument with me as to whether or not 18,000 pesos is a reasonable price to build. He didn't know how the construction was, the size of the beam boxes, the size of the metal. He has no idea the cost of the materials. He has no idea the thickness of the floors, roofing material, types of windows. He has no idea what the contractor was providing me for that. He was providing me with a shell where for 12,000 pesos you could finish me. I could finish the job with tile and bathrooms and kitchens. So he was charging me 18,000 pesos for a shell. That's not the point. The point is Region 6 knew more about it than me without knowing anything about it. He was trolling me, so he paid the price. And Dennis Adam comes up. The shipping container houses are quite popular. They are. They actually are becoming quite popular because you can buy a hurricane-proof shipping container, and they all are hurricane-proof once they're mounted properly to the ground, for $5,000. You can't build anything for $5,000 that's hurricane-proof and or typhoon-proof. And actually, I won't tell you. I have video, but I won't show it, of a guy that, well, it's safe to tell you what he did with the shipping containers because you'll never see them. But a man came from another country and started a business in the Philippines during the lockdown. And he was quite a nice man, which is why I didn't put his videos up. I made videos of his whole project, start to finish, top to bottom, end to end. And then I said to myself, wait a minute. Can he do that? And he did it. I don't know if what he did was allowed or not. So, I didn't post the videos. This is what Dennis was talking about before, that the tip of a nail is more pointed this way than this way. So it would make a difference when you were putting it into the grain of the lumber. I don't know what you can see, but this is pointed that way and more pointed that way. So anyway, digressing back to the use of shipping containers, because now we could have an open discussion. If you have a question, open topic at the end of the live stream. Now you wouldn't be interfering with my topic matter. If you have something that you want to ask and I can answer the question, I think I'll do that, maybe. Well, anyway, the guy buried the shipping containers. I don't know how he treated the outside of the containers. I just saw the staircase going down into the container. And that was pretty cool. And I don't know whether he had a permit to do that or not. I looked at the permit. He had a permit, but I didn't look at the plans. But he did some interesting stuff with shipping containers, and it's all for a legitimate business. I actually watched them. I came back later on, a few weeks later, and they were actually stocking the shipping containers that were underground with the food products that were going to be used in the establishment. But yeah, shipping containers are quite common to be used for living spaces and storage spaces, which is why I went through the trouble and am going through the trouble to waterproof my roof with that vinyl, put plywood over the vinyl, and then I have a tarpaulin that's 10 feet wide and 20 feet long that'll go over the whole top of the container. Because it pays to do that. It pays to preserve the roof from getting any more damage on it, and it also pays to not have holes in the roof and water leaking in on my tools and my stored equipments. So I don't see any questions, but digressing back to the trolls, there's not going to be a big tolerance for trolls. It's not going to happen. If you mention a topic that's off topic related to construction, and you decide to be a little generous with the Patreon, PayPal, you're welcome. You're welcome to do that. You're welcome to be a member of my Patreon page, where then, as a member of my Patreon page, one of the benefits of being a member of my Patreon is that I give your questions a little more credence. But to come onto my channel and to talk about some of the crap that goes on YouTube, or even politics. My last channel was destroyed from Google and YouTube because of my political affiliations and the videos I watch and give thumbs up to. This channel will be non-religious, non-political, and non-biased against not just politicians, but against anybody's religion or creed and or their belief system. And it'll be like a non-denominational channel, but we're not going to talk about religion or politics. But it won't be for the trolls. It's not going to be a troll channel. And one instance, just one infraction of my rules, and you will be blocked. I will go directly to your page if I can find it and block you. Or in the case of Region 6, whereas we couldn't find his channel, so I could only block him on this channel. But I've seen him before. I don't remember whether he was trolling me or not. I don't care. Changed the subject. I looked in my email. I don't see a PayPal for the courtesy of changing the topic matter, the option to change the topic matter. There are options. Money talks and baloney walks. So if you want to change the topic matter, hit the PayPal button and do the right thing. But otherwise, just follow the program, and you'll be good to go. So why have I been off YouTube for 5 or 6 or 7 days? Believe me, I work every day. But there are things I do that I will not make public. They only go, again, to my Patreon members, to my longtime Super Chat members, and my friends. So, I forgot to say one more thing. Oh, God. I should have remembered this. This is important. I can't believe Dennis didn't remind me. Yeah? Thanks, Dennis. That's right. That's right. Thank you for posting it 3 times. He remembered. Dennis is a brilliant man, by the way. And I seriously mean that. You're way smarter than the average person, Dennis is. So, another thing that makes you a troll, this is a big one, because if you do this, I'm going to tell you to hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. Another thing that makes you a troll is if somebody, a channel, a group of bloggers, or members of a community have abused me personally, or my channel, or my construction skills, or my hotel project, or my ex-girlfriend Daisy May in any way, shape, or form. If I remember that person's community, entity abused me, and you were supposed to be my friend, and I see you on a channel run by a person or a group of people that have abused me, and you're commending that channel and or group of people as a friend or as a brother or as something that is wonderful for you, just like you use the same accolades on me. And yet that channel, entity and or personification of a YouTube channel has always been negative towards me. Well, you, just like in the Bible, you can't serve two masters. So I believe that if you say something like, oh, I'm glad I could be here today to support your channel, and that person has always been negative towards me and my channel or my hotel project or my ex-girlfriend Daisy May, that makes you a troll. So we have to say, I got to get that. Maybe I should put that that song, "Hit the Road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more." Because if I determine that you're a troll and you have become friends with someone that has trolled me for years, well, God bless you. That's a good thing. You have chosen wisely, in your opinion, and my opinion too, because now you save me the effort and time to waste my time answering and or addressing your questions or anything else in life. So I will say thank you for making us aware of your true affiliations, what you believe is a good thing. And then you've saved me countless hours of time of being answering your questions and or even talking to you. So you cannot come to my channel. Let's just use Fat Slob blogs for an example. Now, I don't dislike Fat Slob blogs channel. Actually, I enjoy watching his channel. I think I learned more about Southeast Asia and Thailand from his channel than I could have if I watched all the other Thailand videos. Because at least he was honest with his opinions. So now he was abusive to just about everybody to build up his name. Some of it he meant, some of it he didn't. Some of it was comedy, some of it was not funny at all. But we're just using Fat Slob Blog as an example. I should have known better when people were on Fat Slob Blog's channel calling him the best thing that happened since sliced bread. And they were still my friend at the time. But I didn't. I didn't realize there was a conflict of interest. And then it was explained to me that, well, I'm only going there because you can go there for whatever reason you want. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. But he has putting out one abusive video after the other about me, and now you're on his channel commending him for having a great channel. I watch his videos, start to finish, end to end, every word, sometimes twice, because of his topic matter. But I'm not gonna. But you'll never see a comment ever, ever. Since he started, you will never see a comment from me on his channel or any upload he's ever made, because I don't like him. Because he abused me, my channel, my girlfriend, my hotel business, my money. He abused me. But I'm not going to leave a comment on his channel. I won't do that. But we're using Fat Slob Blogs as an example. I have learned more about Thailand from his channel, and I watch every video start to finish. And I look forward to his next videos. Where he went, I don't know. No one is asking that question. But the concept was Fat Slob Blog abused me day in and day out for months, as he did many other people. But don't come on my channel pretending to be my friend and then go to his channel and say, great upload. Good to have you back. You could say whatever you want, but I won't allow you on my channel. It's my prerogative. If you're commending him for a great channel, and in that video upload he abused me, mentioned me in a derogatory fashion, well then there's a conflicting point of interest. And what you people don't understand about me is it's either black or it's white. There's not much gray area when it comes to choosing sides or friendships. I could relate it to relationships with women and men. Wait, Dennis? Okay, Dennis, I'll check that out. I'll check it out right now. I'll open it up. So I could relate, you're either friend or foe in regards to my channel and Fat Slob Blogs channel. Now, I don't mind people going to Fat Slob Blogs channel and commenting, but don't go to Fat Slob Blogs channel and comment on a video that he made where he's abusing me in the video and say, great upload, and then come to my channel and say you're my friend. Because if you didn't watch his entire upload, then you didn't, and you could say, I didn't, well, then don't say it was a great upload. Or say it's a great upload, but you're not my friend. You can't serve two masters. Now, I'll give you a perfect example of that. I'm looking at this hotel. It looks like a two-story hotel, Dennis. Is this the one that has orange doors at the top with a railing on top of it? Is that what you're... Is that the building you're talking about? Okay. So, the one with the orange doors? Yeah, I've looked at those buildings, Dennis, to build with the containers. Yeah, that looks like container doors, actually. Okay, yeah, okay. That does, it looks like the container doors. Okay, yeah, that's a two-story building with a third-story roof deck. Right, okay, I gotcha. Yeah, I don't, yeah, 3 shipping, yeah, I don't, I've seen a lot of shipping container buildings. Even the one that I told you about that the guy buried them under the ground. I have no interest in that at all. It's just not. It's not something I would do. I appreciate you went, and I believe that they're not. They are hurricane proof right from day one. But they're just not something I would want to have to rent in this location or to do it. First of all, I'd have to change the plans, and plans would cost me 40,000 pesos to change the plans. I'm not going to do that. And second of all, to me, it just is not an interesting way to live. Now, if I just had one lot right on the beach itself, and I wanted to put like a slab down, 2 shipping containers side by side, that'd be the way to go. Because it's typhoon proof for sure, and if the slab was high enough, it would be waterproof, but it wouldn't be something I would want to do. And that is one of the reasons. The aircon units. Okay, so it's hard to insulate them. It's not for me. To insulate that, you need to have 2 inches of foam. First of all, you got to paint the container with some kind of Emerald or epoxy base on the container. That's number one, before you do anything. Or coal tar it. And coal tar is not the best product in the world. The coal tar they sell here in the Philippines is really quite the crap product. So you'd have to buy a good spray-on coal tar and too much work. Then to insulate it, 2 inches of blue foam, not white foam, because the white foam breaks down. Then, on top of the blue foam, you have to screw with self-tapping 3-inch, with 3.5-inch self-tapping screws. You have to screw some sort of plywood on top of the foam. And they don't make a waterproof marine plywood that would last 20 years anywhere. They just don't have it in the Philippines. This black plywood I'm making the forms out of is a garbage product. It's just a garbage product from the day I bought it. They put seams on the face of the plywood where it's a vinyl coating on the plywood, and they put a seam every 60 inches. So there's got to be one seam on every face of every piece of plywood, when they could just make a continuous non-seam on the face of the plywood where it won't leak water in. It's a garbage product, and that's the only product that you could use over the foam. And then over that product, you'd have to use a siding for any kind of thermal. You'd only get R11 at best out of a 2-inch foam on the outside, a 16 millimeter phenolic resin board, and then aluminum siding or vinyl siding. You might get R11 out of that. Maybe. Probably you'd get R9. And then you'd have to insulate the inside of the container. Now your container wall is that thick. Now you got to have 5-inch holes in that to put a window in. It's too much work. It's just so much easier to build with cement or forms. But thanks, Dennis. I'm going to get off that topic now. It's just not what I would do. It would be good for a shop. So getting back to, if you want to be a troll, what constitutes a troll. If you people don't know what a troll is, I'm gonna give you my definition. I'm gonna give you what's going to be based on my channel of whether or not you're a troll. So if you have come to the conclusion that somebody that has abused me in a large way over the last 6 months, year, 2 years, or 3 years, and you go to their channel and say, "It's good to be here. It's good to see you." After that person, and you know who that person, what he has done. Fat Slob Blog has abused me from the day he started his channel. And you go to his channel and say, "What a great channel," or "This is a great upload. It's good to be on your channel." You're not my friend. Could I let that slide? Sure, I could, but I'm not gonna. Okay? I grew up in a whole different world. You were either my friend or you were his friend. We could still live next door to each other, but we couldn't be friends. You being friends with me and you being friends with Fat Slob, that's okay. But we're not going to go to the same, or I'm not going to invite you to my barbecue. However, if we went to a third-party barbecue, I wouldn't argue with you at the same time. But you're not going to be an avid lover of Fat Slob Blog and then come to my channel and say, you have a great channel. We are separate. I watch Fat Slob Blogs videos because they're informative. I didn't know that you could buy a wife in Thailand. I didn't know that was legal. Apparently it is. I didn't know that. I had never watched a Thai video before. So I learned from his quite low grade, shall we say, videos and uploads, or low class. I learned a lot about Southeast Asia from Fat Slob Blogs videos. In fact, one of the biggest things I learned about was, damn, they have good prices on food. The buffets that he ate with the ladies that he dated and brought to the buffet, that, what was it, the fish pot? Or I forgot what it was called. It was some kind of buffet. It was a $30. For $30, they had shrimp or crawfish, whatever they were. They were that big. Come on, man. That stuff's $40 a pound in America, let alone a buffet. And they had multiple platters of those huge shrimp. The huge shrimp, the different types of seafood that went along with it, the eggs that looked like an egg that they poured around it, like an egg foo young thing, and the bread, and God, the food is cheap there. It just, I learned so much about Southeast Asia, but I also learned that you could buy a wife. Who knew? He actually went into an establishment, and I don't know how you do it. It's something called a bar fine, which I never knew what a bar fine was. I heard about them. I heard stories about how it works, but I had no idea what a bar fine was. Now I understand almost what a bar fine is, but apparently, I didn't know anything about a bar. So I learned about bar fines, but then I learned that you could actually take one of those girls out of that job that she's working in a restaurant or a bar, and you could pay the owner of that business to remove the girl from her job, and then it becomes your responsibility to take care of the girl. I had no idea you could do that. That's like buying a pair of shoes. And then what I really watched was the last video he made. What really intrigued me was the last video that Fat Slob made was that he broke up with the girl. And I was saying to myself, wait a second, he took the girl away from her job and then treated her like a queen. He treated her very, very good. I mean, there's no doubt that girl lived a high lifestyle. And then he said, because of a difference of opinion between who was paying for dinner and who was paying for what, he broke up with the girl. I'm going to myself, how do you just break up with that girl? You took her away from her job. Now you're responsible for her income. That's what I thought. And I was even right about that, just as a guess. He had to give her what was called going away money or something like that. I had no idea you could do that stuff. I learn a lot from Fat Slob Blogs, but I don't like the basic content of his channel. His walks through the park, fantastic. Look at that beautiful park. His walks on the beach, absolutely wonderful. His videos about food, amazing. Just amazing. The food that you get in Thailand. $5 pizza pies, where in the Philippines they're charging people $10 for 20% smaller pizza pies than you get in Thailand. That's ridiculous what they charge for a pizza pie here. I'm not kidding you about that. I will show you the prices for a freaking pizza in the Philippines. You're going to get sick. Prices. I don't know that I'll put the... You're going to get sick at the price of the pizza in the Philippines. And I don't know how much it costs to live in Thailand, but this isn't even a real price list. Unless they reduced... No, they didn't. They added. They increased the price of their pizza. So it's closed. The store is closed because now this was I'm not going to mention the name of it, but this was my favorite pizzeria. It's closed. It's closed temporarily, and it's been closed for months. Which is sad, but it's $10. Now it's more than $10. I lied to you. The price of pizza in the Philippines, I've said this before in my live streams, it's off the chain ridiculous. Okay, Fatslaw Blog showed me that in Southeast Asia, a business could sell a pizza for $5. That was bigger than this store's pizza, more meat, more cheese, more sauce, and a bigger pie for $5 than this place sold for $10. Now this place has a pizza pie, cheese only, $10. The everything pie at this place, I'm going to look for the prices with menu price. Huh? The everything pie was closer to $12. I think, if I remember correctly. Soup of the day, appetizers, baked, Italian, chicken, few more pizza. Pizza. It's crazy, I tell you. I'm not going to name the name of the restaurant, but I told you 6 months ago that these pizzerias were pricing themselves out of business. And now his store is closed temporarily. But one item, one topping on top of a pizza. Chicken Parmesan. I'm gonna show this to you because I took the name, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ludicrous. It's sickening. Chicken Parmesan, what do you see? Chicken Parmesan. $13.50 to $15.50. Do you know how much $15 is? $10 in pesos. That's like 500, 750. That's like 800 pesos for a pizza pie. Let's go $15. 15. And I'm lying to you about the price of the pizza. It's a lot more than that. $15. Here it is, right here. $15 in pizza is 752 pesos. 752 pesos. That's 1.5 days labor for a Filipino. But it's not 750 pesos. That's a lie. I told you I was lying to you. Add to that number, which is why I did not go back there the last 3 times I ate pizza. Add to that number a 10% VAT tax. So 750 plus 75 is 825 pesos. 850 pesos for a pizza pie that I eat by myself. So what? And it's only this big. It's not even it's 12 inches. It's not even 13 inches anymore the last time I went there. That's a lot of money for one pizza, for one person. In America, that's a reasonable price. But in the Philippines, 850 pesos is for the average person in the mall. I'll tell you what they make in the mall. I'm friends with a girl that works in the mall. She makes 400 pesos a day. That's it. So that's 2 days and a few hours or an hour's work for one pizza. No drink, no tip, no soda, no iced tea, nothing to drink except you get table water. That's 2 days. In America, what do you make a day? $200 a day? For most people, $200. That's $400 for a pizza pie. In Philippines, transition Philippines prices to American as days labor. Days labor in America is $200 a day, so 2 days labor is $400 for a pizza pie. 800 pesos here, you make 400 pesos a day, that's 2 days labor. That's ridiculous. I told you 6 months ago they were pricing themselves out of the business. So I refuse to show you the name of the pizzeria. That's just one topping. Let's go and see what the specials are. The special is the same price, $15.50. The special is, I don't know what's on the special. Broccoli and tomatoes, $15.50. Vegetarian, $15.50. Steak pizza, $15.50. Calzone, $15.50 or $10.25. Excuse me. French pizza, garlic, fresh mozzarella, and oregano, $15.50. It's ridiculous. It's still 2 days' pay for a Filipino. Now we're going to go to the other pizzeria and see if they're even open anymore. And then we'll go back to the topic of Fat Slob Blog. Pizza in Bohol. The other guy doesn't even have a name on in Google yet. All right. So in any event, I forgot the name of the pizzeria that I went to, and the pie was $10. $10 for a pizza pie with just cheese on it, no topping. And Fat Slob Blog was Fat Slob Blog was buying pizzas for $4.50 at where he was in Thailand. And the pizzas had more meat, more cheese, more toppings, more sauce, more everything than these two places in Pang Lao. I'm not going to mention the name of it, but it's ridiculous. I told you 6 months ago these people were pricing themselves out of business, and they did. What was the name of that? What was the name of that? Thank you. The video quality is fantastic. It's a good way if you have a limited budget, but I have enough money to build out of concrete. Oh, what I should do. You know what I should do? I should blow everybody's mind. I should open up this ledger book. Because I've been filling out some of my expenses since I got the Bahal. And if you believe what's in the ledger book, and there's no reason to not believe it, I have spent more money than 90% of all the expats in the Philippines. Probably spent more money than 90% of you so-called well-off expats. You have no idea how much money I spent since I got here. When you add in vacations, rents, equipment, plans for the hotel, permits for the hotel, rentals, rental properties. And now there are multiple rental properties for the hotel that I rent. And I have spent a lot more money. Just this month, we'll go over it, but just this month, if I decide to actually pick something up, this month will be a $9,000 month. This month. Last month was a $3,000 month, as was January and December. So I don't want to hear that I'm broke anymore. But moving on, I think I'll make that a topic for another day. So Fats Law Blog teaches us a lot about Southeast Asia. Now, I don't know anything about Thailand, and I have no wish, want, will, or desire to move to Thailand at all. But he taught me a lot about Thailand. I had no idea you could buy a wife. And then I had no idea that there was a proper way to get divorced. I think he called it a divorce from his live-in partner. I think it was going away money. Now, he was with her for a month, right? She lived like a Rockefeller. So theoretically, she got spoiled, yeah? I would think. And I have my questions as to whether, well, that lifestyle would not be for me. I don't drink. So, but I enjoy watching his videos where he gets drunk and goes into his rants at the end of the video and stuff like that. I enjoy that. It's entertainment for me. But I've never commented on his. I don't ever remember commenting on his. Not his channel now, not his other channel. I don't remember. And if I did, then I made a mistake. That I said I never did. But I don't remember it. But he has a legitimate way to learn about one part of Southeast Asia. So I watched that. But to say that Fat Slob Blog is a great guy, in the same video where he's abusing me or my hotel project or something like that, and then to come to my channel and say, oh, it's good to be... No. It's good that you don't come to my channel. That's a troll. And we know who that is, don't we? Yes, we do. You made the mistake of putting it public. Therefore, you did it intentionally, knowing that we would see that. And that's good that you've chosen a side. It's good to choose a side. But please don't come to my channel anymore. If you've been to Fat Slob Blog's channel and commending him or someone else, that what great content. You could go to his channel and say, wow, that's a really good price for pizza. But don't go to his channel and say, there's a great blog. In the middle of his blog, he talks about me for 10 minutes. And then come to my channel and say, it's good to be here. Because you're not going to be here very long. If I opened up that book, and I think I might do that next week when I start to get more people watching, easily this month, if I don't spend another $1, we're into this month for well over $4,500. this month alone. That includes, of course, the Warren bucks for the phone, but still, I had to take that out of put that on my card because the banks here are just such, they treat us so well. The banks here just have so much love for their customers. 2 weeks my bank is closed. No voice recording, no message on their website, no notice on their door. So I ended up, instead of taking the money out of the bank, I ended up using a credit card, which did not have a 3% fee. But easily at $4,500 this month, which leaves, for this month, my expenses were $3,000. Forget about the equipment I'm buying. If I buy all the equipment I have slated to buy, we're going into a $10,000 month. But I want to get certain equipment here before I go pick up other equipment. So I don't need all the equipment until I set up the original, what I need. So, but easily it could be a $10,000 month. And I still have, I don't have much time, do I? It's the 28th. Oof, I better get going on that. So we're looking at $4,500 this month. And then we're going to be looking at 5, 6, 5. Hold on. I have it written down. We're looking at $5,000 US for that one item that I will be picking up. Of course, my normal $1,000 in expenses, so that's $6,000. I still haven't gotten the rebar tying tool, which is going to be $300. So that's $6,000. It's $38,000. It's $800. Excuse me. 40,000 pesos for that big gun. 800. So it's 5,000. 1,000 for the expenses and 800 for that gun, because I can't buy a $300 gun. They just refuse to send it. So we're looking at 7,000 for next month, and then I'll be ready to buy steel. And steel, my first order of plywood, well, I know how much that is. My first order of plywood for the forms will be 20,000 pesos, or $400 for the plywood, and then another $300 for lumber. So that's another 1,000. And the steel, my first steel order, my best estimate is going to be, my first steel order will be about $3,000 US. So those are some of my expenses. So when I tell you that I have spent or will spend more money than most foreigners could even comprehend, that's the truth. And for people like Mike Ross, why are you eBay? Mike Ross, I put up a PayPal button on my account. If people appreciate my videos and they like my content, they can PayPal me. If they want to change the subject matter, they can pay for that privilege of changing what's on my mind and what I'm going to talk about. And if they don't want to PayPal me, they can just watch the show and enjoy the show. But Mike Ross, I don't need people like you on my channel. So digressing back to what a troll is, I think I pretty cleared. Oh, I said a troll. This is how it works for me. Your wife could be a troll, or your girlfriend could be a troll, by definition. So You guys that come to the Philippines and are dominated by women somehow, where every step or every innuendo of your life revolves around making a woman happy. If that's how simple your life is, God bless you. But when the woman, and this happens a lot, I don't need my glasses on for this one, when the woman takes sides with the locals or her family over you, it's time to remove her from the equation. If you are providing for a woman everything she could ever want or hope and or dream for, and you have one simple request: I come first. And she can't get that through her cultural mindset. And you want to put up with that level of cultural intelligence. Well, that's, to me, that's, you're being controlled by a troll. Because she's not your best friend. She doesn't have your best interest in her mind. Her mindset is her family first, and then you. Or her family, her dog, then her cousin, and then you. That's not looking out for number one. Like, you are doing everything in your power to make her life everything that it should be in your mind. And then she turns around and this happens all the time. I only mention it because it just happened recently. She turns around and she does something against you because of some stranger in the community, a complete stranger. Someone, you don't even know their name. They know who you are, but you don't even know their name. And she becomes friends with them. You say, look, I don't, these people here, I really don't have much to do with them. They're not looking out for my best interests. I would appreciate it if you don't socialize with those people. And you come home from the stores, and there she is, as the great mama says, jibber-jabbering with the neighbors. But didn't I ask you not to do that? Yes. Didn't I specifically ask you, please don't socialize with that particular group of people? Those people over there are fine, but those people over there, not so much. Yes. What are you talking to them for? Well, they're Filipino. Okay, they're Filipino, but we already discussed why I would appreciate it if you didn't, associate with them. Because the first thing every Filipino does is ask you every personal question that they can come to their mind. They have about 15 personal questions. And a weak-minded person is going to start answering those questions. Well, I don't want a weak-minded person in my life. And therefore, unfortunately, she's gone. Because she couldn't do something simple. Because her culture, Philippines culture, always comes first. Always comes first. Always. So that would be against my moral turpitude. So if you're my friend, you can't be friends with, you could be friendly with Václav Blog, but you can't sit there and praise him all day, or other people that have abused me in the past. I will not allow that. So if you do that, I'll just have to ask you to hit the road. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. That's probably the longest part of any song I ever knew. But it is fitting Because there have been people that have come to my new channel from my notice and come on and trolled me that I've been watching all over YouTube, being buddies with this person and this channel and that channel, and that's fine. If you have that miserable or that lonely of a life that you have to be friends with all those people that abuse me, you do that. But don't come to my channel and then say, well, you have great content. I'm not interested. I'm not going to take the time. In real life, like I said, you're either my friend or his friend. You're not going to get invited to my barbecues. I'm not going to get invited to your barbecues. But if we go to a neutral party, we'll be congenial to one another. But in the meantime, don't troll my channel and tell me that you're my buddy when you're not. And that's a troll. And you know who you are if you've been listening carefully. So, with that, we have 3 hours and 41 minutes. 3 hours and 41 minutes. And I will say thank you very much for stopping by. And my next live stream will probably be on Hoodwinked by an Angel. And it probably have to do with something I do outside, but maybe not. I'm not real sure. Right now, I'm going to have lunch. And it's the cool part of the day. I'm going to go in and gut my workbench, what's on top of the first 8 foot of my workbench, and slide it down or put it on the floor and at least prepare for a new top for the first 8 feet of my workbench. But thanks for watching. Thank you for my wrenches. God day to everybody from Michael Fazio in the Philippines, baby.